Before my rebirth, my senior sister and I each raised a spirit beast. Our purpose was to cultivate their inner cores after taming them. As the sect's most prized disciple, she claimed a majestic white tiger first. Being of lowly status, I was left with nothing but a scrawny fox, yet no one anticipated that the tamed white tiger would succumb to demonic corruption, instead of obtaining its beast core. My senior sister lost all her cultivation. My little fox, however, turned out to be a nine-tailed celestial beast from ancient legends. Blinded by jealousy, my senior sister pushed me off the cliff. I was reborn and found myself back on the day of choosing my spirit companion. My senior sister smiled warmly, saying she'd choose the little fox. Only then did I realize she'd also been reborn, with the sole purpose of sending me to hell. On Spirit Beast Selection Day, my senior sister miraculously appeared at the woodshed where I stood in tattered clothes. Though normally too proud to set foot in such squalor, she now beamed while pulling me by the hand. "Junior Aloan, have you found a spirit beast that catches your fancy this time?" I staggered to my feet and said, "Not yet." Her smile softened as she took my hand with sisterly affection. "In that case, senior sister can recommend a few options for you. Among the spirit beasts we've captured, there's a 1,000-year white tiger that seems perfectly attuned to your spiritual roots. Why not choose it as your familiar, junior sister?" I subtly withdrew my hand and asked, with senior sister Celeste present, how could I possibly claim such a prime spirit beast for myself? 1. We're martial siblings, no need for such formalities between us. Her eyes gleamed with an unusual intensity. "Aloan's always been the most obedient, as your senior sister. It's only right I help you carefully plan something as important as choosing a spirit companion." Meeting her gaze, I softly murmured "mem," and said, "I'll leave it all to your discretion, senior sister." Only then did she relax, saying with a beaming smile, "Then it's settled. At the spirit beast selection, just choose freely, I'll handle everything else." Had this happened before, I'd have taken her words at face value and been moved to tears of gratitude, but now it's different. I know full well she's doing this just to kill me. She was reborn. What she doesn't know is that I've also been reborn. Returning before her with memories of how she murdered me in our past life, at the familiar selection ceremony, Celeste stood atop the highest balcony as usual. She's always been the center of attention, basking in the limelight wherever she goes. As the direct disciple of the Ethra sect, she's been spoiled rotten since childhood, getting whatever she desired, even with an unstable spiritual root at birth. Endless celestial treasures could transform the most worthless core into extraordinary talent, but I'm different, a foundling picked up from the foot of the mountain, born several tiers beneath her, with my spiritual roots remaining dormant. The entire sect took it for granted that I possessed the weakest cultivation potential, utterly unfit for the path of immortality. They merely tossed a ladle of slops my way while feeding the dogs, watching my emaciated frame with indifference. Without hesitation, I dropped to the ground and licked the filthy gruel clean. The sect disciples laughed at the spectacle, remarking I was no different from a talking mutt. In my past life at the sect, I endured endless humiliation. Hardly anyone ever showed me a kind look. Celeste saw right through this, and with just a simple bowl of warm congee, she had me utterly devoted to her. Back then, I naively believed senior sister was a saint, the kindest soul in the world to me. Little did I know that was only the beginning of the nightmare. When she chose the white tiger as her spirit beast, I fought tooth and nail to tame it for her. Even when the tiger mauled me bloody, I'd think of how it aided her cultivation and deem it worthwhile. When the demonized tiger damaged her foundation and she asked to use my spirit beast for cultivation, I only hesitated briefly. My spirit companion was just an unremarkable little fox, but what I never expected was that Celeste wanted not just my little fox, but my very life. The day she pushed me off the cliff, I witnessed the little fox reveal its true form, a nine-tailed fox of immense magical power. To save me, the little fox willingly sacrificed its inner core. Only then did I realize Celeste had been manipulating everything from the very start, since the spirit beast selection. Now we've returned to that fateful day of choosing spirit beasts. My gaze swept across the rows of animal cages until it landed on the narrowest one, where a scrawny little fox lay curled up. At the same moment, Celeste locked eyes with the same fox, her face radiating smug confidence. Choosing a spirit companion is simple, just infuse the creature with your unique spiritual energy to complete the bond. Celeste naturally took the lead. Without even glancing at the mighty white tiger, she strode straight to the farthest corner and pointed at the little fox. "I choose this one." Her declaration sent murmurs rippling through the crowd. Celeste smiled sweetly. "As your senior sister, it's only natural I save the best for you." She tilted her head at me, too. "Don't you agree, junior sister?" All eyes turned to me in that moment. I had to admit she was silver-tongued. With just that one sentence, she not only reinforced her poised persona but also subtly held a knife to my throat. In her past life, she lost all her cultivation because of keeping that white tiger. This time around, she's trying to pawn that cursed creature off on me. Unfortunately, she misjudged me. I replied timidly as always, I appreciate senior sister's kindness, but my spiritual roots remain unawakened. I fear I cannot tame such a fierce beast. Gazing at the little fox in the cage, I murmured, I was never destined for immortality. This is likely my limit. Why not show some mercy, senior sister, and let this little fox keep me company? In Celeste's eyes, I'd always been utterly obedient. When she said jump, I never asked how high. If she ordered chickens slaughtered, I wouldn't dare bring a sheep. This was the first time I'd ever openly contradicted her, just as expected. Celeste's face darkened instantly. She forced a smile and asked, Did you forget everything I told you before we came here? Of course not, I replied obediently, but senior sister also mentioned that your first heavenly tribulation is approaching soon. The tribulation period is a rite of passage every immortal sect disciple must endure. It's like a carp leaping through the dragon gate. Those who transcend the tribulation ascend to greater magical prowess, while those who fail remain forever stagnant at their current level. In her past life, Celeste's unstable spiritual roots compelled her to seek a mighty white tiger's power to survive her first tribulation. A pity she chose poorly, a white tiger spirit that had fallen to demonic corruption. I said innocently, the tribulation approaches. How could I not consider my senior sister's well-being? Both Celeste and I had our eyes on the little fox, and the atmosphere turned tense instantly. She shot me a resentful glance before turning to the elder, instantly reverting to her usual considerate and gracious senior sister demeanor. I must admit my junior sister's foresight puts me to shame. Forgive my oversight, elder. Then her tone shifted as she continued, since Aloan also fancies this fox, why don't we both channel our spiritual energy and see who earns its contract? What say you? Her proposal may seem fair, but it's clearly setting me up for failure. Everyone knows my spiritual roots remain dormant. I can't even perform basic sword flight, let alone compete with her, but with matters having come this far, I had no choice but to say, as senior sister commands. The cage door creaked open, startling the curled-up fox kid who let out a pitiful whimper. It limped out, its matted fur still dripping with fresh blood. As I watched blood ooze from its hind leg, memories surfaced of another wounded fox I'd encountered while gathering firewood in my past life. On pet selection day, the tiniest cage held yet another fox. No one wants a dying fox, just like me. So worthless that no one even notices. In the end, I took it home and made it my spirit companion. We leaned on each other and survived the toughest years in the sect together. Now reborn into this life, I wonder if my little fox still remembers me. Faced with Celeste's unwavering determination, I had no choice but to take a desperate gamble. As I gathered a faint spiritual energy at my fingertips, Celeste let out a mocking laugh. What's this? Little sister actually fancies this wretched mutt, with an air of haughty disdain. She casually formed a seal and prepared to cast it upon the little fox. To everyone's surprise, the little fox leaped up at the last moment, deftly dodging her seal and placing its paw on my palm. The fox chose me. The outcome was settled then and there, Celeste's face turning ashen. The golden child since birth, she never imagined being bested in a spirit companion selection, a stinging slap to her pride, though seething inside. She maintained composure before the elders and addressed me with icy detachment. Junior sister's cultivation may be lacking, but you certainly have a knack for choosing spirit pets. 3. Cradling the little fox, I replied with demure humility, all thanks to senior sister's gracious concession. With a scornful laugh, Celeste turned on her heel and stormed off. I finally succeeded in making the little fox my spirit companion. Gently, I channeled spiritual energy to heal its wounds. It recovered swiftly, and within days was leaping around me playfully before curling up affectionately in my arms to sleep. These habits are almost identical to my past life. Back then, the disciples looked down on my lowly status, and hardly anyone would speak to me, so every day, I could only talk to the little fox. It would sit quietly beside me, never interrupting. The memory brings a bitter taste to my mouth. Last lifetime, my devotion to Celeste cost not just my own life. But even my little fox perished in the end. Stroking its back quietly, I asked, Do you remember me? A soft whimper answered me. Feeling better, I asked, Do you have a name? This time, the little fox stayed silent. All right then, I'll give you a name. I recalled the name I gave him in my past life and said solemnly, Let's call her Lyriel. Lyriel was an ancient demon of legend. When I chose this name, I hoped my little fox would grow into a true demon like the legendary Lyriel in this lifetime. I've come to realize that little fox is a true demon lord. Since Celeste sees me as a thorn in her side, I'll make sure to outlive her in every way. The thought of Lyriel dying because of me in our past life fills me with unbearable grief. I silently vowed to make Celeste pay the price she deserves. The next day, Celeste sent me a letter summoning me to the beast taming grounds. As the name suggests, this arena was designed for taming spirit beasts, the more powerful a spirit beast, The wilder its nature, to make a spirit beast willingly become a familiar, various taming methods must naturally be employed. A spirit beast must first have its wild nature tamed before it can become a proper familiar. Beast tamers require not only profound magical prowess, but also the resolve to stare death in the face. Should the spirit beast suddenly frenzy, that'd be the end of your life right there. That's why beast taming is typically left to the lowest of the low. In my past life, I was Celeste's beast tamer. Back then, I'd spend entire days battling white tigers in the training arena while Celeste watched idly from the sidelines. Without extraordinary magic powers, I had to risk my life in every fight. After each beast match, I'd be left half naked with my skin covered in wounds. Not a single patch of unmarked flesh remained. She'd just offer a few comforting words, then inevitably coax me back to the taming arena next time, while I suffered living hell in that arena. She basked in the benefits I brought her, parading her white tiger through the streets daily. Now she dares try the same old tricks to lure me in again. How unfortunate she picked the wrong mark. I took the letter from her with perfect composure and said, "Since it's my senior sister inviting me, I'll definitely be there." Lyriel had been sleeping, but pricked up her ears the moment she heard this. She pounced into my arms and clamped down on my sleeve. I understood her meaning. Just like in our past life, she caught the scent of danger and was desperately trying to stop me from going. It's a pity I didn't pay much attention to its behavior at the time, but now, not only am I going, I'm also bringing Celeste a special gift. I stroked Lyriel's ear and said, "Don't worry, I'll be just fine." I penned my reply and, as a courtesy, forwarded Celeste's invitation to all the sect elders. Never in her wildest dreams did Celeste expect a routine beast-taming session to draw every elder of the sect. Her mediocre cultivation left her utterly unprepared for the savage creatures in the arena, her face visibly paling. "I only invited my junior sister to the beast arena. Why are all the elders here?" I smiled demurely, maintaining a respectful demeanor. "Perhaps the elders came to witness senior sister's exceptional cultivation prowess. Is that so?" Celeste's smile never wavered as she abruptly changed the subject, taking my hand. "In that case, why don't you join me in beast taming, junior sister? Let's show the elders how capable our youngest disciple has become." Sensing my hesitation, she added, "Don't worry, I'll protect you with my life. You won't get a single scratch." For the same old script from my past life, a cold laugh escaped my lips. That was always her excuse when making me tame beasts. She kept claiming it was to show the elders my cultivation progress, but in truth, the only sound echoing through the training grounds was my screams. Even when the elders occasionally saw my wounds, they'd just assume I lacked skill. Never once did anyone ask how I got injured. Only Lyriel would tend to my wounds. At this thought, my eyes darkened, yet I answered obediently, "As you wish, senior sister." Celeste brightened, clearly unaware the person before her was no longer who she remembered. She said softly, "Then I'll go ahead and scout the path for my junior sister." Her words sounded sweet, but in truth she just wanted to wait until I was locked in mortal combat with the white tiger before making her move, playing both ends against the middle. Too bad her scheme was too transparent. I couldn't help but smile as I gazed at her exquisite face. Little did she know I carried memories from a past life, having long since mastered the white tiger's temperament. The true art of beast taming lies not in magical prowess, but in understanding a spirit beast's nature. In my previous life, I sparred daily with that white tiger until I knew its every whim. Had I not succumbed to demonic cultivation, I might have trained it into a first-class spirit companion. How could such a noble spirit beast fall into demonic corruption? I stared intently at the defensive white tiger. Recalling how Celeste used to summon it in my past life, I whistled. But instead of calming down, it bared its fangs and lunged at me. Had it not been for my beast-taming skills from a previous life, I'd have become its dinner. In that lightning flash moment, I suddenly understood why the white tiger fell into demonic cultivation. In her past life, Celeste's spiritual roots were unstable. To accelerate cultivation and stabilize her foundation, she must have resorted to forbidden dark arts on the white tiger. The method worked. The tiger became a formidable spirit beast, but the side effects manifested, the ever-present risk of demonic possession. That's why the white tiger reacts so violently to whistling sounds. My mind raced as an idea began taking shape. Since Celeste wants to accelerate her training, I might as well give her a push. I couldn't help but chuckle at the white tiger's razor-sharp claws. After all, Celeste's face is famously breathtaking, with that face of hers. The entire sect practically bent over backwards to please her. If anything were to happen to her, it'd be like tearing out her very soul, and I'm precisely the executioner who'll make it happen. When Celeste arrived, I was lying in a pool of my own blood. The white tiger lay collapsed nearby, its breathing equally faint. I clearly saw the irrepressible delight flashing across her face, but in the next instant, her expression morphed into shock, her delicate features draining of color. "Junior sister." What happened to you? Her fake, saccharine act made me sick to my stomach, but I swallowed my disgust and whimpered pitifully, "Senior sister, look." As she turned, the half-dead white tiger suddenly sprang to life, and swiped straight at her face. With my startled scream, a vicious claw mark suddenly appeared across her face. The rhythmic dripping of blood filled me with perverse delight. I could never tell her it happened the very second before she arrived. I cast a minor spell upon that white tiger. I crafted a tiny charm from the whistle of her past life. I feigned panic and shouted. Just as expected, the elders outside the beast-taming arena turned their gaze toward us. Celeste covered her face and knelt on the ground in mortification. 5. The beast-taming was her idea, but she's also the one who botched it. How powerful can a sect disciple be if they can't even subdue a spirit beast? Can someone like this truly shoulder the sect's great responsibilities? Unsurprisingly, I caught the flicker of disappointment in the elder's eyes. The two things Celeste prided herself on most, both her status and beauty, vanished overnight like fleeting illusions. Celeste's face would likely never fully recover. I was brushing Lyriel's fur when the news reached me, her soft belly exposed. I couldn't resist giving it a poke, instantly lifting my spirits. Lyriel let out 2 disgruntled meows before turning around and settling onto my lap. Her injuries have been healing well lately, her fur growing increasingly glossy and silky. Perched on my shoulder, she always draws envious glances from fellow disciples who long to pet her. All I got in return was Lyriel's snarls and growls. What a temper! But the moment I appeared, Lyriel instantly turned docile again. As if that mischievous fox tormenting others wasn't her at all, it nodded slightly, accepting my inquiry with unshakable confidence. This inevitably reminded me of when I first brought Lyriel home in my past life. On that bone-chilling night, we had neither firewood for warmth nor proper clothing. I huddled in the woodshed, shivering uncontrollably from the cold. If Lyriel hadn't warmed me with her tail, I might have frozen to death there. Back then it was just a tiny thing, now it's almost up to my knees. I can't help but think of the legends saying 9-tailed foxes are born with enchanting grace. With age, they even gain the chance to take human form. What would Lyriel look like? Being so beautiful, she'd surely become one of those extraordinarily striking humans, dressed in flowing gowns with jeweled hairpins. She'd undoubtedly be a breathtaking beauty beyond compare. Just imagining that vision, I held it close and stood up in a daze. Just as I was about to check its belly, it suddenly let out an unusually soft whimper. When I stroked its ears, it turned its head as if sensing something and locked eyes with me. I asked in confusion, "Don't you like it when I touch you?" Lyriel's ears flushed pink as she jumped down in embarrassment, vanishing from sight in moments. I saw Celeste again during the routine sect assembly. A delicate veil covered her face, revealing only her eyes. The moment she saw me, her gaze turned venomous. I knew she hated me for ruining her face. Yet that didn't stop me from greeting her as usual. I approached and said softly, "How have you been, senior sister?" Celeste's voice turned icy. "Did you come to laugh at my misfortune, junior sister?" I smiled wryly. Wouldn't dream of it. I knew perfectly well how miserable she'd been, but I asked that deliberately. The purpose of this sect assembly is to evaluate the disciples. In my past life, I kept missing it while taming beasts for Celeste, until I lost even the qualification to attend. Back then, Celeste pretended to plead for me with the elders. Filled with gratitude, I redoubled my efforts to tame beasts for her, until the day she dropped her hypocritical mask and told me to my face. She never even mentioned me before the elders. In fact, half the reason I couldn't attend the sect gathering was thanks to her. Now I stand before her, stealing fragments of the attention that rightfully belonged to her. During that beast-taming trial, though everyone knew my spiritual power was feeble, I held my own against the white tiger far longer than expected. The elders' gazes lingered on me at last, if only for a fleeting moment. Covered in blood, I roared my name to the heavens. The sex assessment consists of 2 parts, written exams and combat trials, but this year's combat trial involves sword flight mastery. When the elder announced this, Celeste shot me a knowing glance. I instantly realized this was her idea. Sword flight requires spiritual roots as its foundation. 6. Simply put, spiritual roots are like firewood. The stronger the flame, the faster the water boils. In other words, the purer one's spiritual roots, the greater their cloud-riding abilities. My sword flight has always been weak due to unawakened spiritual roots. Very few people knew about this matter, but in my past life, I trusted Celeste too much and spilled everything to her. That included the art of sword flight. She approached me with unconcealed regret in her voice. "Sword flight requires spiritual roots, junior sister. With yours still dormant, how will you compete?" She looked at me with barely concealed glee, her voice dripping with false concern. "All the elders will be watching this trial. What a shame it would be if you couldn't participate." I understood exactly what she meant. Whether I can sword fly or not, she'll always find a way to give me a hard time. I chuckled lightly and said, Thanks for the heads up, senior sister. Celeste really had me by the short hairs, yet it never occurred to her that there might be other ways to ride a sword besides channeling spiritual roots to maintain sword energy. What if I don't use a sword at all? I've been pondering this ever since returning from the beast taming grounds. If I can harness a spirit beast's core, couldn't I also borrow its magic to ride a sword? As I lowered my head pondering the question, Lyriel gently tugged at my skirt with her teeth. Her moist eyes instantly melted my heart. I hugged her and asked, "Would you like to try too?" Lyriel whined softly and rested her paw on my chest. I could feel the fiery pulse of my own heartbeat through her touch. Celeste stood smugly on the balcony, waiting to see me fail. Little did she know I'd already crossed the finish line with ease. The Grand Elder was quite surprised that I reached the destination first. I truthfully explained my method to him, saying, "We raise spirit beasts to aid our cultivation. If flight can be achieved through spiritual roots, it stands to reason we can also harness a spirit beast's power. A spirit beast mirrors its master. Ever since forming our pact, we've become one. That hardly counts as breaking the rules." The elder couldn't help but show a glimmer of approval in his eyes as I finished speaking. He asked who I was currently training under. I immediately dropped to my knees, saying this unworthy disciple isn't fit to catch the elder's attention. If the Grand Elder would be so kind, I humbly seek your guidance. As I finished speaking, I was rewarded with the Grand Elder's approving smile. Word spread like wildfire that the Grand Elder had taken me as his final disciple. The once neglected woodshed buzzed with activity as well-wishers came pouring in. Celeste alone didn't even receive a congratulatory letter. Her face was disfigured, and she showed no remarkable performance in the evaluations. The elders gradually grew distant toward her. The disciples all began to grasp the underlying implications. In that instant, all the former glory of being surrounded by admirers vanished. That was precisely when I ran into her. I had just stepped out of the Grand Elder's courtyard at that moment. Celeste glared at me venomously, her words dripping with poison. "I heard you've pioneered a new sword-riding technique with spirit beasts." "What a remarkable achievement," I said flatly. "Wouldn't this be thanks to you, senior sister?" Her expression contorted further at these words, her gaze nearly boring through me. "7. I underestimated you before. In just a few months, have you developed some hidden ability I don't know about?" She's probing. She wants to know if I'm like her, someone who's been reborn, but I'll never let it show. A faint smile played on my lips as I said, "How could that be? Surely you know my capabilities better than anyone, senior sister." She let out a cold laugh and retorted, "You'd better be." But I never expected Celeste to be this unhinged, fearless when madness takes hold. She only tolerates possession. What she can't have, she'll tear apart by any means. By the time I realized Lyriel was missing, Celeste was already at my door, knocking with arrogant triumph. Trailing behind her was a white tiger, bristling with menace. Clenching a nearly lifeless fox cub between its teeth, Lyriel was thrown violently onto the ground. The white tiger pinned it down with a paw on its throat, staring defiantly at me. I knew just a little more pressure would do it. Lyriel would be crushed under the tiger demon's foot in an instant. My heart pounded wildly as I struggled to keep my composure and asked, "What happened?" Celeste smirked and answered me flippantly, "Junior sister, I forgot to mention something. Your little fox ran wild. And as ill luck would have it, that wretched creature's claws scratched my spirit beast. What do you propose we do about this?" She pointed at a blackened wound on the white tiger and said, "Sect rules state spirit beasts must not harm others wantonly. Any that injures humans shall be beaten to death." She clenched her teeth. She deliberately emphasized the word flogged to death. The white tiger pressed its paw down, and I clearly heard Lyriel's pained cry. Staring at the wound on the white tiger's back, swirling with dark energy, I said solemnly, "There's no way my Lyriel could have scratched senior sister's spirit beast. These wounds could only come from a demon-possessed familiar." The moment those words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake, but it was too late. Celeste smirked at me with predatory amusement dancing in her eyes. "Aloan, how exactly would you know my familiar is demon-possessed?" With a casual wave of her hand, the wounds on the white tiger vanished instantly, just an illusion after all. Those so-called wounds she mentioned were merely a ruse to test if I'd truly been reborn. Clearly, her gamble paid off. A radiant smile graced her face. "Aloan, you've finally admitted it. You've been reborn too." Celeste bound me tightly with immortal binding ropes. My heart raced as her approaching figure drew nearer. "Are you out of your mind? Daring to tame a white tiger? Aren't you afraid of falling into demonic madness like in your past life?" "So what if I do?" She shrugged carelessly. "Just kill it before the madness takes hold." Problem solved. Her hand closed around my throat, eyes gleaming with menace. "All I want is the inner core. Does it matter whose? If the white tiger's gone, there are other spirit beasts," she hissed venomously. Once you're dead, that wretched fox's core will make a fine spiritual pet. With every move she made, my breathing grew more labored, yet the memories in my mind remained unnervingly vivid. Celeste has truly lost her mind. To kill me, she's willing to repeat the exact same mistakes from her past life. What's even more terrifying than last time is, 8. Now she doesn't fear demonic possession at all. She has only one purpose driving her actions, that's sending me straight to hell. Yet the suffocation I'd anticipated never came. With a thunderous crash behind me, my vision was suddenly flooded with blinding golden light. The golden glare blinded me. At that very instant, the hands strangling me suddenly loosened. Then came Celeste's blood-curdling scream. A bewitchingly beautiful woman stood before me, demonic markings fully emerged on her forehead, her eyes blazing with unrestrained fury. Yet when she turned to me, her expression softened slightly. Behind her lay the lifeless white tiger and Celeste, whose eyes streamed with unceasing blood, but she ignored everything, instead asking me with a radiant smile, "Do you still recognize me?" I stared blankly at him and said yes. It was Lyriel. She had taken human form. Celeste was thrown into prison for deliberately harming sect disciples. I was stunned when I heard the news, but my daze wasn't because of Celeste. It was due to the stunning beauty who'd suddenly appeared beside me. Back when Lyriel was still a little fox, I could hug and cuddle it without restraint, even sharing meals and sleeping together. Snuggling under the same blanket was never an issue. But here's the catch: Lyriel has now become human, and a breathtakingly beautiful woman at that. Wherever I go, Lyriel follows right behind me. No matter what I do, she just sits there staring at me intently, nothing like the sweet, docile little fox she used to be, looking at me like she wants to devour me whole. Finally, on her 10th furtive glance in my direction, I took a sip of tea and feigned composure as I spoke. "See something interesting?" She visibly startled before smoothly picking up the conversation. "Looking at you." After a moment's thought, she added, "You're the most beautiful." I nearly spat out my tea, and so began my cohabitation with Lyriel, though I repeatedly forbade her from climbing onto my bed. Yet every night, I'd see the fluffy little fox wagging her tail at me. She'd pout and ask me, "Didn't you always hold me while we slept? Are you saying you don't want me anymore?" Seeing the tears welling up in her eyes, my defenses completely crumbled. I couldn't muster a single word in response. Completely defenseless, I thought to myself, "Are foxes born this alluring?" "Not really," Lyriel replied, her captivating peach blossom eyes full of charm. "Among our nine-tailed fox kin, we only assume human form when meeting our destined one." She whispered these words right against my ear. I could clearly hear my heart pounding like war drums. Struggling to maintain composure, I asked, "What if I raised you just to harvest your golden core for cultivation?" "Then take it." Lyriel placed my hand over her heart and said solemnly, "If you wish it, I'll let you extract my core." My heart skipped a beat as I feigned sternness to scold her. "Why must you say such nonsense? Keep it up and you'll be sleeping on the couch." She seized the crucial point, "So that means I can come to bed?" I snapped. "What do you think?" She replied with smug satisfaction, practically wagging her tail. "That settles it then." My days at the sect began to take on a leisurely pace. With the Grand Elder's guidance, my cultivation progressed by leaps and bounds. I soon stood out among all the disciples. More and more people began to take notice of me. Even those arrogant direct-line disciples started treating me with respect. I can now easily obtain those rare celestial treasures Celeste used for cultivation. Blinded by Lyriel's transformation strike, she now spends her days weeping in the prison cell. Her behavior grew increasingly erratic and unhinged. Thus fell the once favored daughter of heaven. The elders say she might spend the rest of her days in a sunless dungeon. The news left me completely unfazed, but Lyriel, with uncharacteristic coldness, said, "Why keep her around? Better end it now." The look on her face showed she loathed Celeste 100 times more than I ever could. I couldn't help but chuckle as I pinched her cheek and said, "It's all in the past now, why dwell on her?" Lyriel leaned in obediently, her eyes sparkling, and said, "I just think she got what she deserved." 9. But we never could have imagined, to escape her fate, Celeste ripped out her own spiritual core before the tribulation. This was complete demonic possession, in her past life. She only accidentally corrupted the white tiger. This lifetime, she willingly embraced demonic cultivation. She sought not just my death, but to drag the entire sect down to hell with her. When I confronted Celeste directly, her demonic corruption had already taken deep root. She slaughtered mortals and deities alike without distinction. It had practically turned into a merciless killing machine. But the moment she saw me, a rare clarity flashed in her eyes. That brief clarity soon gave way to burning rage. With a furious roar, she lunged straight at me. Lyriel was working tirelessly to heal the other sect disciples. The sight made my blood run cold with urgency. I gave her a reassuring smile, about to say, "I can handle this." But the next instant, Celeste unexpectedly flanked me from behind. My smile froze midair. Celeste pressed her sword against me, threatening Lyriel. "Take one more step and I'll kill her." True enough, Lyriel halted. her fathomless eyes fixed intently upon us. "What do you want?" "Want what?" Celeste chuckled softly and said, "A familiar shares its master's fate. Save her if you will, but it'll cost your life." She hissed venomously. "How about you extract the golden core right before my eyes?" Lyriel agreed almost without hesitation. I practically screamed Lyriel's name, but Celeste just looked at me with pity. "What else did you think you could change? Little sister, in this life or the last? You were always destined to die by my hand. What's with this master-servant melodrama? Aren't spirit beasts born to have their cores harvested?" My voice trembled with rising hatred. "You're insane." Celeste burst into laughter and said, "You're only acting tough because of that stinking fox. Let's see what tricks you've got left without her." She began recounting everything from their past life. When she finally reached the part about choosing spirit companions, madness gleamed in her eyes. "Why did you get to bond with a primordial beast while I'm stuck with this puny white tiger? I was clearly the Elder's favored disciple. Why must you steal what's rightfully mine?" Her grip suddenly tightened, strangling the breath from my lungs. As I turned my head slightly, I saw Lyriel raise the blade against herself, just like when she saved me in our past life. It suddenly came back to me, those final moments in my past life. To save me, Lyriel willingly extracted her beast core. Though my spiritual power was weak, I never once considered core extraction, yet Lyriel endured the agony of core extraction for me, time and again. The thought sent a dull ache through my heart, forcing a smile at Celeste. I stammered out, "In your dreams," then, from somewhere deep within, an unexpected surge of strength came over me, with a thunderous roar. I broke free from Celeste's grasp. I seized her sword and swiftly reversed its trajectory. The blade plunged cleanly into her chest. At that very moment, I felt surging spiritual energy coursing through my veins. It surges through my veins like an ocean tide. 10. I pointed my sword at Celeste and said icily, "I never intended to compete with you for anything. It was your endless jealousy that destroyed you. I didn't have her privileged background, everything I have. I fought tooth and nail for. Just moments ago, my spiritual roots were still dormant. Core extraction isn't the only path to cultivation. Talent can shape destiny, but it doesn't dictate everything." These were my final words to her. "Destiny lies in your own hands, not others." With that, I turned away without a second glance, for I had far greater matters demanding my attention. I stumbled toward Lyriel, who met my gaze with a faint smile. Then she collapsed unconscious. Lyriel was taken to the Elder's care due to severe blood loss. Worried sick, I kept vigil by her bedside nearly every day. Even the Grand Elder started teasing me, asking if I needed an extra bed set up nearby. This suggestion perfectly suited Lyriel's intentions. She immediately agreed. I turned beet red with embarrassment. After my battle with Celeste concluded, the entire sect witnessed the full eruption of my spiritual roots. From that moment, my name became legendary. A vacancy for a direct disciple under the Grand Elder had just opened. I was formally accepted as the Grand Elder's disciple, embarking on my true path of immortal cultivation. Lyriel was gradually recovering. Taking advantage of her injured status, she became even bolder about sharing my bed. Though I was concerned about her wounds, she shamelessly asked me to examine them, and seized the opportunity to get handsy. In the end, she got her way and climbed into my bed, but during all this time together, I began noticing something strange. No matter how many times I counted, there were only 8 tails, but Lyriel was supposed to be a 9-tailed fox. When I voiced my confusion, Lyriel smiled faintly, leaning close to whisper in my ear, "What? Would you abandon me if I didn't have 9 tails?" He tickled me all over. How could I possibly concentrate? The matter was left unresolved, until she wrapped her arms around me and asked, "Do you remember saving that little fox years ago?" Memories came flooding back, and it suddenly dawned on me. When I was a child gathering firewood in the mountains, I actually came across a badly injured little fox by the roadside. I didn't think much of it at the time. Had Lyriel not mentioned it, I would have nearly forgotten about the whole incident. Could it be? That's right. Lyriel pressed a kiss on my forehead, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "The little fox has come to return the favor. My name is Lyriel. I was named by a human girl. Since childhood, I've known I'm the mythical 9-tailed fox, each tail representing a life, 9 lives in total. But when I was young, my small frame nearly made me prey to other spirit beasts. A human girl saved my life when I was on the brink of death. Seeing her in tattered clothes, I couldn't help but feel pity. Little did I know we'd meet again at a pet selection event. With my leg bitten and injured, escape was impossible. Crouched in a cramped little cage, everyone chose majestic spirit beasts. Only she, this pitiful little thing, got stuck with me. She didn't recognize me, but cheered up instantly, saying she finally had her own spirit companion. That's when the name was given. Only then did I realize how hard her life in the sect had been. Not only was she shunned by the elders, but constantly bullied by fellow disciples too. Yet it was precisely in those circumstances, against all odds, she survived and took such good care of me. Those years living with her were the happiest time of my life. The trouble began when her wicked senior sister set her sights on my core and her life. Her senior sister pushed her off the cliff, a bottomless abyss, unfathomably deep. I wanted to save her, so I severed a tale to rewind time. We were both transported back to the day of choosing spirit companions. I curled up in the cage too, waiting for her to approach. Unsure if she recognized me, I extended my paw in greeting. Then came the words I'd longed to hear. I choose the little fox. Compared to her past life, she's grown wiser and more cautious, yet she treats me with the same unwavering kindness as before. So when she asked if I still remembered her, I longed to tell her we'd actually met long ago. How far back does it go? Back when she didn't even remember. I already had her memorized. Her image was etched in my mind long ago. What drew me in? It was how she never treated me as cultivation material, but rather as family. So when her senior sister sought revenge, I fought for her for the first time. I took human form, smiling radiantly. Do you still recognize me? The end. Next story. When the earthquake came, Mom didn't hesitate to run out while holding my younger brother, leaving me, a young child, behind. Afterwards, I cried loudly. Mom said, "It was just a small earthquake, you're just being overly sensitive. Even though I didn't take you with me when I escaped, you're still fine. Aren't you?" She clearly knew that if it weren't for the two big golden retrievers that protected me, I might have lost my life. I didn't die, but I lost the two big golden retrievers and my legs. Later, accompanied by the surviving little golden retriever, I gradually got out of the shadows. Grandma thought that having a dog would affect my younger brother's studies, so she secretly sold it. I hysterically questioned why she sold my dog. Mom slapped me hard and said, "It was just a dog. Is it worth yelling at your grandma?" They didn't know that I had been diagnosed with severe depression, and the little golden retriever was my only salvation. That night, I forced myself to climb onto the balcony and jumped off. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the day the earthquake came. 1. The aroma of the food wafted into my nose. Along with it was Mom's gentle voice. "Dean, Mom has made your favorite sweet and sour pork. You should eat an extra bowl later." Then came my younger brother's impatient voice. Got it, got it. It's so annoying." I looked in the direction of the voice. Mom, wearing an apron, was busy in the kitchen, and my younger brother was sitting on the sofa watching TV. Mom didn't have white hair, and my younger brother was still 8 years old. The two big golden retrievers were lying at my feet, sound asleep, and I hadn't lost my legs because of that earthquake. Everything proved to me that I had been reborn. I was reborn on the day the earthquake came. If I remembered correctly, when Mom served the stir-fried sweet and sour pork, the ground began to shake. Realizing this, without saying a word, I grabbed the collars of the two golden retrievers, one in each hand, and dragged them towards the yard. As for my younger brother, I told him that there was a nest of swallows under the eaves on the second floor. Sure enough, my younger brother, who had been watching the cartoon, immediately became excited and opened the door to rush to the second floor. Finally, the moment I walked into the yard and my younger brother ran up to the second floor, the ground began to shake, too, just like in my previous life. The moment the house started to shake, Mom threw away the sweet and sour pork in her hand and rushed to the living room. Seeing that my 75-pound younger brother wasn't downstairs, she started shouting my younger brother's name hysterically and searching the room. When she heard my younger brother's voice coming from upstairs, she rushed out quickly, never mentioning my name throughout the process. However, almost at the same time she rushed into the yard, the whole building collapsed with a loud crash. The ground was still shaking, and I had reached the safe area. I slumped to the ground, and the two big golden retrievers were snuggling beside me. I hugged them tightly. It was great that they were still alive, and my legs weren't broken either. Unexpectedly, while I was still immersed in the joy of surviving the disaster, Mom suddenly rushed into the ruins and started searching for my younger brother. She didn't stop crying until she found my younger brother with blood on his legs after her nails were turned over. After crying, as if she had thought of something, she pounced on me, grabbing my hair and hitting me. "You dead girl, you saw the earthquake coming and didn't even shout. You only cared about these two beasts and ignored your younger brother. Why wasn't it you who had an accident but your younger brother?" 3. My face stunned, and my ears were buzzing. This scene seemed to pull me back to my previous life. At that time, I was pressed under the ruins and watched as Mom protected my younger brother in her arms. The two golden retrievers protected me from left and right, and they were already barely breathing. Afterwards, when I was rescued by the rescue team, I cried and questioned why she only saved my younger brother and ignored me. Mom said that she didn't mean to. When the earthquake came, her first reaction was to run with my younger brother, and she really forgot about me. She even posted a short essay online with the title, A small earthquake made my 11-year-old daughter hate me for a lifetime. My legs were almost crushed, and I had to face amputation because of the righteous comments from netizens. Mom spoke sarcastically to me in various ways. She called me overly sensitive and narrow-minded, and said that I was an ungrateful person. My younger brother also showed off everywhere, saying that Mom loved him the most and that I was a burden. I gradually fell into depression because of their scolding and the death of the two big golden retrievers. Later, when I was in a wheelchair and mourning Jojo and Coco, I saw the little golden retriever they gave birth to in the ruins. Since then, there was a glimmer of light in my life, but who would have known that they would push me into the abyss again? I still remember the gloating look on my younger brother's face when I found out that Grandma sold my golden retriever. He looked at me with a bad smile and said, "You dead cripple, Grandma sold your dog to the dog meat vendor. Too bad I didn't get to taste the dog meat. It must be delicious. You said you have depression. I think you're just pretending. If you were really depressed, you would have died long ago. How could you still be alive?" Perhaps seeing that I didn't reply, Mom flew into a rage again. She slapped me hard again and cried, "I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? Why are you looking at me like that? Am I wrong?" At this time, many people who had survived the disaster gathered around. Thanks to Mom's loud voice, everyone looked at me. I burst into tears and said, "How could I know there would be an earthquake? I'm not a fortune teller. Aren't you glad that I escaped too?" Instead, you hit me and questioned why it wasn't me who had an accident. Aren't I your own child? If I hadn't taken Jojo and Coco out in advance and it was me who had an accident, would you scold my younger brother and wonder why it wasn't him? After my questioning, Mom was stunned on the spot. The others present also started talking all at once. "Yeah, Esme's mom, you said that both children are equally dear to you. You should be glad that Esme is okay. Why are you hitting the child? Instead of scolding your daughter, you should go and check on your son. You're lucky, unlike my family, my child's grandfather and father." The person who spoke last started wiping away tears. In the direction where her gaze landed were two relatives who had been dug out by everyone but had already lost their vital signs. Probably reminded by this, Mom realized that her younger brother was still under the ruins. She cursed and rushed over with several others to dig out her younger brother whose legs were still in the ruins. When she saw that her younger brother's lower body was covered in blood, she cried her heart out, "Dean, Dean. Don't scare Mom, look at your sister, Dean." Mom just said a few words to her, and she came up with a lot of reasons. "Dean will definitely be good when he grows up, unlike your sister. She will definitely be an ungrateful person." I didn't refute. Instead, I sneered in my heart, "Mom, since you've already decided that I'm an ungrateful person, if I don't live up to your expectations, won't you be disappointed? But now that it's my younger brother who's paralyzed, I really want to know how you will deal with it." 5. My younger brother managed to save his life. As I expected, his legs were almost crushed, and he had to be amputated from the root of his thighs. Mom wept all day long. Every time she saw me, there was a hint of resentment in her eyes, but when I looked at her, that resentment disappeared in an instant. Instead, she said coldly, "Esme, your younger brother is like this now. You should study hard. Mom still has to go to work. After your younger brother is discharged from the hospital, the responsibility of taking care of him will fall on you." With these words, she revealed the truth of why she could tolerate me, but I'm no longer that easy target. So I said, "Mom, I'm only in the 5th grade. I'm so stupid. How can I take care of my younger brother? And I still have to go to school. How about this? You resign and take care of my younger brother. Or you can ask Grandma to take care of him." Perhaps remembering all the times she had disliked me for being stupid, and thinking that I was indeed unreliable, Mom finally sighed and said, "Fine, I'll beg Grandma to come and take care of your younger brother." In fact, in my previous life, Mom didn't consider who would take care of me at all. Even when I was in the hospital, she was extremely perfunctory, most of the time. She just brought my younger brother to the hospital for a quick look and then found an excuse to leave. Even when I was in the hospital, I often went hungry. It was the aunt in the next bed who couldn't stand it and shared some of her food with me every time she ate. At that time, Mom was afraid of spending money and took me home after I had been in the hospital for only a week. Grandma made an excuse that the aunt whom my father newly married was about to give birth, and she ignored me. Mom was busy going on blind dates and didn't come home at night after getting to know a new boyfriend. My younger brother ate well with Mom, leaving me at home hungry and full. When I could move around in a wheelchair, Mom started ordering me around. As for my younger brother, who was only a year and a half younger than me, he didn't have to do anything. I was scolded by Mom. I swept the floor, wiped the table, cooked, and stir-fried dishes while sitting in a wheelchair. My younger brother played games and called me a cripple. Every time this happened, I would cry out of sadness and hysteria. Mom smiled and blamed me. Your younger brother is young and doesn't know any better. Can't you just let him be? I couldn't bear it anymore and questioned. My younger brother is younger than me, but I'm disabled. My legs are broken. But how did she reply to me at that time? She suddenly changed her expression and said with disdain in her eyes, "Yes, you're disabled. But it wasn't me or your younger brother who made you disabled. You can only blame your bad luck." After that, I learned to keep my mouth shut and stay silent. 6. Because of his disability, unlike me in the previous life, this time my younger brother took the initiative to drop out of school. Grandma, after Mom's pleading, although she complained, she still agreed to take care of my younger brother. Mom was able to continue working, moreover, for the sake of my younger brother. She didn't go on blind dates everywhere or have a new boyfriend. Instead, besides work, she focused all her attention on my younger brother. In fact, Mom and Dad had already divorced, and Dad had reorganized his family half a year ago. Grandma lived a carefree life usually, even though she didn't care about either side. Considering that there was a grandson here, she agreed to Mom's request. She took good care of my younger brother, whether he was disabled or not. They didn't reduce their love for my younger brother at all. Mom even bought a game console for my younger brother to pass the boring days. But even so, my younger brother's temper became very strange and irritable. Facing such a younger brother, I, who was still young, could only stay as far away as possible and focus all my energy on studying. In my previous life, because I became disabled, Mom didn't ask for my opinion and directly handled my withdrawal from school. So far, not having the opportunity to go to school was the biggest regret in my life. Now that I was reborn, I vowed to study hard on my own, take good care of the 2 big golden retrievers, and get out of this home. Heaven helps those who persevere. With my persistent efforts, I was admitted to the best middle school in the county as I wished. When Mom learned this news, instead of being happy, she was worried. That night, Mom specially called Grandma and they came to my room. They took turns trying to brainwash me. Mom said, "Esme, you're already a grown girl. Mom knows that you study well and are sensible, so Mom hopes that you can stay in the county to go to high school. In this way, you can come home after school and help Mom take care of your younger brother." Grandma chimed in, "Yeah, Esme, your mom has been working so hard. If it weren't for you, your mom wouldn't have to work so hard to earn that little money. Now that I'm getting older, it's very tiring for me to take care of your younger brother. Your parents are divorced. When you get married in the future, the only one you can count on is your younger brother." I interrupted Grandma's words. "You keep saying that you're working hard, but it's all for Dean, not for me. Also, Dean's legs are disabled. I study well. As long as I study hard, get into a good university, and get a good job after graduation, tell me, who should count on whom?" After these words, Grandma and Mom fell silent at the same time. I guess that they should now know who is more valuable. 7. After that conversation, Mom and Grandma's attitude towards me changed. While they were nicer to me than before, my younger brother was still the first in their hearts. But it didn't matter. The most important thing was that Mom allowed me to go to the Municipal Key High School as I wished. After I started high school, I lived on campus and only went home once a month. I received my living expenses on time, and Mom would call me to show false concern from time to time. She even took good care of the 3 golden retrievers. I accepted all of this, until one time when I went home, I went to the living room to get some water at night and heard the conversation between Mom and my younger brother. The door was slightly ajar, and Mom walked into my younger brother's room with a plate. My younger brother was playing games and hardly looked up. Mom leaned in to please him and said with a smile and a low voice, "Eat quickly, these are the braised chicken legs specially made for you. Your sister doesn't have any." My younger brother pursed his lips and finally showed a smile. "Mom, I'm disabled. You still love me." Mom kissed him on the face and said, "Of course, no matter what you become, you're Mom's most beloved baby. What about my sister? You're so nice to her." Mom said again, "Your sister. Silly son. Mom is being nice to her for you. After she graduates and finds a good job, won't the money she earns be used to find you a wife? Mom is secretly saving money. Tell Mom what you want to eat and what you want to play. No matter how hard and tired Mom is, it's all worth it for you." I sneered. My heart felt even more desolate. In my previous life, I was disabled and at home, and everyone despised me, especially my mother. She always regarded me as a burden, and several times she left me at my father's place, but my father had already formed a new family and didn't care about whether I lived or died at all. One memory that's deeply ingrained in my mind was in the winter when I was 16. My mother disliked that I dropped a grain of rice while eating. She suddenly went crazy, slapped me dozens of times, and finally pushed my wheelchair and left me downstairs at my father's house. It was very cold. I was wearing an old and thin down jacket that she didn't want, below my waist. I was only wearing a pair of thin pants. At that time, it was snowing heavily. The snow piled up thick on me. I was shivering. I begged my mother not to abandon me and cried out for my father to let me in and take shelter, but neither of them showed up, and I almost froze to death. In the end, someone in the community saw me and called the police for me. The police contacted my mother and told her that if she did such a thing again, she would be punished for the crime of abandonment and would go to jail. My mother took me back and angrily slapped me a few more times, and then told me her true feelings. When I divorced your father, I thought that bringing you over would mean you could help out. Who knew you'd be such a burden? You're in this state. What's the point of still living? Why don't you just die? Sure enough, love is love. And lack of love is lack of love. After hearing all this, I didn't say anything. I just silently remembered it in my heart. I knew that my efforts would pay off one day. Soon, I successfully entered a key university. Because I had a balanced diet and often ran for exercise, I was healthy and strong, unlike in my previous life when I had muscle atrophy and was thin and small. Now I was even half a head taller than my mother. When I was a sophomore, in a good mood, I bought a mina. Whenever I was tired from studying or after finishing my part-time job, I taught it to speak. During the summer vacation, I even took the little mina home, saying it was to relieve my younger brother's boredom. When my younger brother saw the beautiful mina, he happily said, "Even though you're a burden who can't earn money, at least you have some sense of self-awareness and know how to please the only man in the family." I smiled but didn't say anything. Instead, I hung the mina above his head. Perhaps seeing that I was beautiful and graceful, my younger brother's eyes turned gloomy when he looked at me. He pursed his lips and said coldly, "So what if you're good-looking and in university? In the end, you'll still earn money for my wife." Before I could retort, the mina hanging above my head suddenly said, "You cripple, hey, you cripple." The mina was very talkative, and once it started talking, it couldn't stop. Unfortunately, since I bought it, I had only taught it this sentence. I laughed so hard that I bent over. My younger brother's face turned from white to green, and he was instantly broken down. Finally, he roared, "Esme, did you do it on purpose? You must have done it on purpose, using this mina to anger me. Mom, Grandma, look at this burden who can't earn money." My younger brother's shouting quickly caught the attention of my mother and Grandma. My mother rushed in first, but when she heard the little mina still shouting cripple, she immediately started scolding me. "Esme, what do you mean? Your younger brother is already pitiful with his broken legs. You even bought a dead bird to laugh at him." Grandma even rushed up and wanted to take down the mina I had hung up and throw it out. Unfortunately, at 5 meters tall, even if she jumped, she couldn't reach it. Instead, I pushed Grandma, who wanted to hit me, away fiercely and said coldly, "It's just a bird. Why are you so defensive? And it's not wrong. Should it call him long-legged instead of cripple? I'm a student at a key university now. You all have to count on me. Besides, I'm under a lot of study pressure. What else can I do but find some fun?" My mother was so angry that she trembled all over. Since she couldn't beat me, she could only scold me. "Don't you have any conscience? He's your own younger brother." I laughed loudly. "You said it. My conscience was eaten by a dog. So don't count on me from now on." That night, my mother didn't call me for dinner, but when I smelled the fragrance of the food, I went out to eat by myself. My mother threw down her chopsticks and said, "I didn't cook for you." I unceremoniously picked a plate of my favorite food and put it in my bowl, making them even angrier. In the following days, I continued to stay at home, with everything served to me. I also tipped the mina to Dean's room from time to time. No one could do anything to me. That night, I heard my mother and Grandma whispering in the room. Grandma said, "Let her continue. She's like a grasshopper after autumn. She won't be able to jump for a few more days. When she goes to school, don't give her the living expenses. When she realizes her mistake, she'll beg you to transfer money to her. By the way, sell those dead dogs. They eat more than people every day." I once begged, but it was in my previous life, at that time, even though I was depressed. In order to prevent my little golden retriever from being tortured after my death, I still struggled to live, but they went on a trip during the National Day and left me alone at home. I had no legs and was inconvenient to move. There was only enough food at home to last for 2 days. Even the water was cut off. During that time, I called them, but both my father and mother refused to answer. After the food ran out, I didn't know who to ask for help. When I and the 3 golden retrievers were so hungry that we were weak, my mother posted photos of the 3 of them on a trip in the moments and captioned it, "The greatest happiness in my life is having my beloved baby by my side." When I was extremely hungry, I could only take the 3 golden retrievers and climb down the stairs to look for food in the garbage. When I was thirsty, I found plastic bottles and filled them with tap water from the property's public toilet to drink. Despair surrounded me, and I hated every one of them, but I didn't even have tears of hatred. I could only drag my broken body and hold on until they came back, so I was extremely grateful that God gave me a chance to start over. When school started this time, I took the 3 golden retrievers with me. Coco and Jojo were already very old, and I knew they wouldn't be with me for long, but I still did my best to rent a house outside so that they could enjoy their old age. Perhaps seeing that I didn't respond, my mother took the initiative to call me a month after school started. First, she pretended that nothing had happened, and then she probed and asked, "Esme, you know it's not easy for Mom to support you in school all these years. Don't forget Mom's efforts for you. You'll graduate soon. Mom is thinking that when you start working and get your salary, you can give it to Mom, and then Mom can enjoy a good life." I stopped pretending and smiled and asked back, "Mom, I haven't graduated yet, and you're already eyeing my salary after I start working. Stop pretending. You supported me to go to university just so you can suck my blood and make me support you in the future. Have you forgotten what you said before? You said I'm an ungrateful person. How can an ungrateful person be a good girl?" My mother was completely enraged. She was so angry that she gasped for breath and finally said harshly, "Esme, you're really ungrateful. Why didn't I strangle you when you were born?" I still smiled and said, "Mom, you've raised me so big. Don't you think it's too late to say these things now?" This time, she was so angry that she hung up the phone directly, and I blocked all her contact information before she could do anything. 10. In fact, after entering university, I had been doing part-time jobs. I also asked for more living expenses every month, saved money by being thrifty, and saved the extra part. I even found a senior who wrote novels and learned how to write novels from her. Through my efforts, I also had a considerable income from the manuscript fees. In my previous life, before the National Day, the motherland was prosperous, and the new actions shocked the world and became the most brilliant existence at that time. The stock market also started to soar a few days before the National Day, especially one stock was like a dark horse, and everyone who invested in it made money, and I didn't miss this opportunity. I used all the money I saved in the past 2 years to buy the stock that would soar in my previous life for short-term investment and made a profit, so cutting off the living expenses didn't matter to me at all. Throughout the semester, my mother didn't give me any more living expenses, and I lived the life I had always dreamed of. I went to work during the day and wrote and played with the dogs at night. The winter and summer vacations were even more pleasant. Unfortunately, the peaceful life was always broken by someone. Soon, my mother asked relatives to inquire about my current situation. The person who came sent a WeChat message asking how I was doing at school and how I was getting by since my mother didn't give me living expenses. I deliberately pretended to be poor and said that I didn't have money and couldn't even afford to eat. I could only go to the cafeteria and shamelessly drink some free soup and water every day. The person told my mother about my situation. Soon, the relative sent me a screenshot of the conversation between my mother and her. When my mother learned that I was living a miserable life, she said triumphantly that I was an ungrateful person and deserved it, until a semester later. My mother called and finally found out that I had blocked all her contact information. She panicked and asked relatives to tell me that as long as I admitted my mistake, she would transfer money to me. I smiled and told the relative, "No need. I was lying to her before. In fact, I have enough to eat and drink and I'm very happy." My mother was really angry. She lost her temper with the relative and finally, in a fit of rage, spoke ill of me. I also learned from the relative that my mother spread rumors about me. She told the people around her that I blocked her and she couldn't contact me, but I was living a good life without worrying about food and drink. She also said that I was good looking, and since she didn't give me living expenses but I could live comfortably, I must be kept by someone. Otherwise, where did I get so much food and drink? After all, many girls in university became mistresses. This time, I just smiled it off. I also blocked the relatives' contact information. 11. The year that I sent Coco and Jojo away, I successfully graduated from university. They left peacefully, leaving their child Declan by my side. I moved out of the place where I used to live and successfully applied for a job as a screenwriter in a big company. After creating several bestsellers, I bought a small apartment with all my savings and even got a driver's license and bought a car. I went to work and created during the weekdays and tipped Declan to the suburbs to enjoy the scenery on weekends. In the past few years, I also heard some news about my mother and father. I heard that my father wasn't doing well. He was old and was laid off by the company. He couldn't find a new job either. He used all his savings and borrowed money to buy an electric car and started running Didi. But he found that the platform took a large commission and the competition was fierce. so he couldn't earn much money. His stepmother disliked that he had no money and was useless. They had a big quarrel and she wanted a divorce. He was in constant turmoil. Later, my father had no choice but to get a divorce, even to fight for the custody of the children. He left the house with nothing. Unfortunately, after the divorce, he found that the 2 children he had fought so hard to raise weren't his biological children. In a fit of anger, he abandoned the 2 children and lost both his money and the children. At this time, he remembered how good my mother was and went to her to ask for a reconciliation, and my mother actually agreed. However, birds of a feather flock together. The 2 of them didn't get along well, even after they remarried. They quarreled a lot, big quarrels every 3 days and small quarrels every 2 days. The 2 of them had no money and the resentment grew. So not long after, the 2 of them, who had remarried, came up with an idea and set their sights on me again. Unfortunately, neither my father nor my mother, nor any of the relatives knew where I was, until finally, they started threatening me and spreading the news everywhere that if I didn't go home, they would call the police and say that I was dead and cancel my household registration. When I heard this news, I was amused. Their ignorance was really ridiculous. My household registration had already been moved away when I was in university. And even if the household registration was to be cancelled because of my death, it had to go through the formal legal process. So, in the face of their useless shouting, I just chose to ignore them. In fact, the reason I paid attention to their news wasn't that I wanted to know whether they were doing well or not, but that I was waiting for an opportunity that would allow me to offset all the resentment from my previous life. 12. In fact, after I died, my soul lingered in the human world for a while. When my mother saw my body, she pretended to wipe her tears in front of everyone and cried loudly, but behind everyone's back, she cursed me. She asked me why I didn't die far away and had to die downstairs. She said, "You knew that this house was going to be sold to buy a wedding house for your younger brother, right? That's why you deliberately jumped off the building to disgust us and make this house unable to be sold. You didn't even die far away, you were a burden when you were alive, and now you're still despised even after death." She even planned to dig a hole in the suburbs and bury me directly, but because it was not allowed by law, she could only take me back to our hometown. Even so, they buried me hastily, but they were very attentive. They found a very famous old Taoist priest to perform a ritual, trying to trap my soul underground and prevent me from being reincarnated. After learning all this, I kowtowed and begged the old Taoist priest for mercy and told him everything I had experienced. The old Taoist priest sympathized with me. Instead of making me unable to be reincarnated as my mother wanted, he opened the door of life for me and let me have a chance to start over. I still remember the scene at that time. After the old Taoist priest chanted the incantation, he silently added, "She's also a poor soul. I'm willing to trade 20 years of my life to give her a chance." Then a golden light wrapped around me and sent me back to the day when the earthquake happened. Before that, something else happened. A few days after I died, there was another earthquake in my hometown. That earthquake wasn't very strong. I don't know if it was because the house wasn't sturdy or if it was retribution, but while the entire village remained unharmed, only our building was reduced to pieces. Unfortunately, they weren't at home that time, otherwise, so that earthquake was exactly the opportunity one had been waiting for. As the day I'd been anticipating drew near, I dialed my mother's cell phone number, 13. When she heard it was me on the other end of the line, my mother sneered, "I thought you were dead. You still remember to call your mother." As my mother cursed at me, my father's voice also reached my ears. "Whose call is it?" My mother said impatiently. "Who else could it be? Isn't it that ungrateful wretch?" My father quickly snatched the phone away and scolded my mother. "What ungrateful wretch? That's our dear daughter." I smiled and continued to listen to their act. Sure enough, after my father grabbed the phone, he started criticizing my mother. "Esme, how have you been all these years? Don't mind your mother's harsh words. In fact, she's talked about you a lot these years. She's all bark and no bite. She's long regretted quarreling with you. Your father also regrets divorcing your mother, otherwise, your younger brother wouldn't be disabled, and you wouldn't have cut off ties with the family. It's all my fault." At the end, my father even pretended to choke up. Since he started acting, of course I couldn't be left behind. After irritating my eyes with an onion and pinching my thigh, I choked up and said, "Actually, I regret it too, especially when I see other classmates spending holidays with their families while I'm all alone. Dad, please tell Mom I'm sorry. I know I was wrong." My father agreed and excitedly said to my mother, "Did you hear that? Our daughter is apologizing to you. Both children are equally dear. They both came from your womb. I think you two should make up today." Hearing this, my mother hesitated for a moment before agreeing to take the phone. I asked her to put it on speaker and then told them my plan. I told them that I was now self-employed and could earn a lot of money each month. The older I got, the more I understood their hardships, and the more I longed for a complete family. I also said I wanted to move back to my hometown because life there was more peaceful. After hearing this, my parents kept nodding in agreement, complaining to me about how expensive life in the city was, where even drinking water cost money, and how much better it was in the village. They also said that the house in the hometown had already been renovated and I could live there if I went back. Secretly delighted, I started painting a rosy picture for them. I told them I had saved some money and planned to use it for my younger brother's wedding. I also asked them to clean up the old house first. I would order a new set of furniture online, replace all the old things, and told them to return the rented house in the city and move back to the hometown first. Then we could hold the wedding there. This way, it would not only be convenient to hold the wedding but also easier for matchmakers to introduce suitable partners. After all, it was harder to find city girls who knew each other well compared to those from the hometown. Finally, I also ordered a refrigerator, a TV, and other large furniture online. After doing all this, I showed them the order screenshots. I told them to leave for home immediately to clean up, and I would be back in a few days. Seeing my sincerity, my mother and the others agreed. 14. I don't know if it was because they were thinking about arranging a marriage for Dean soon, but my parents acted extremely quickly. Early the next morning, they sent me photos of themselves on a minibus heading back to the countryside. Grandma, Dad, Mom, and my younger brother were all in the photos. I replied, "Okay, you go home and get ready first. I have some work to deal with here. It will probably take a few days. I'll be back as soon as I'm done." My parents didn't suspect anything and even reported to me the progress of cleaning the house over the next 2 days. On the third day, my father remembered the furniture I bought and messaged me asking why it hadn't arrived yet. In fact, right after taking the order screenshots, I immediately requested a refund. The so-called furniture would never be delivered to the house. So I told him that since our home was in the countryside and the items were large, it was inconvenient for delivery. Besides, I checked and it would only arrive the next day. Although my father felt a bit reassured, he still wasn't completely at ease. Finally, he simply messaged, "We're making arrangements for your brother's marriage. The blind dates will start tomorrow. Why don't you transfer the betrothal gift money to your mother first? Then when your brother goes on the blind dates, we'll have more confidence. By the way, you know that these days, the betrothal gift money has gone up. We can't do it without $1 million or so. We can't let others look down on us." The message came in at 9 o'clock in the evening. I glanced at it but didn't reply. Instead, I continued working on the latest script I had taken on. In the middle of the night, my phone issued a piercing earthquake alarm. I woke up from my sleep and saw the aftershock alert. The high-rise building I lived in shook gently, but my social media feed was in an uproar. When I opened the web, news about the earthquake in my hometown was everywhere. Just like in my previous life, the earthquake wasn't very strong, centered around the entire village. Fortunately, except for our family, everyone else only suffered minor injuries. Only our newly renovated 2-story house was in ruins again due to the earthquake. The next morning, someone from the village called my cell phone. The first thing they said when I answered was, "Is this Georgia and Barrett's daughter?" I replied yes. And then they told me that my father, mother, grandmother, and younger brother were all buried under the rubble. God knows, when I heard this news, I could barely contain myself and almost laughed out loud, overwhelmed with joy. I had to hold the phone away from me and kept pinching my thigh hard to stop myself from laughing. After calming down, I pretended to choke up, asked about their situation, and said I would take a bus home immediately. 15. After a 4-hour drive, I finally returned to my hometown. The first thing I did was to confirm whether they were dead or not. Unfortunately, they were all still alive. The silver lining was that both my parents were paralyzed, and my younger brother, by an odd twist of fate, had his genitals crushed. Only my grandmother, who went out to use the toilet in the middle of the night, survived unharmed. Now, 3 people in the family were paralyzed. My grandmother cried and asked me, "Girl, what should we do now? There was already 1 disabled person in the family, and now there are 2 more. Why is God so unfair, picking on our family like this?" After saying that, she wiped away her tears and grabbed my hand. "Girl, from now on, your grandmother, your parents, we're all counting on you." I silently pulled my hand back, looking at the 3 people who had just come out of the emergency room and were still lying in bed. I said calmly, "Don't worry too much for now. Let's take it one step at a time. Grandma, I'm glad you're okay." My grandmother didn't understand the hidden meaning in my words and just nodded in agreement. "That's right. I'm already so old. If I had been hit, I might have ended up in a coffin." While my grandmother was out, I looked at my unconscious parents, lying neatly in their beds, and said calmly, "Dad, Mom, there was never any furniture. I just made up an excuse to get you home. Now that I see you lying here like this, I'm at peace." Then I told them everything that happened in my previous life. Finally, I couldn't help but sigh. It's a pity that from start to finish, you never knew I was looking forward to this day. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw tears streaming down my father's and mother's faces. Everything proved to me that I had been reborn. This was their perfect ending. In the evening, I made an excuse to go out and buy food, bought a ticket, and left for good. No matter what happened to them in the future, my grandmother would have a hard time. After all, she was old, and now she had to take care of 3 disabled people. Just thinking about it made me feel sorry for her. 16, I returned to the city where I used to live. Perhaps it was fate. Once, when I took Declan to the countryside for a walk, I saw the old Taoist priest who had helped me in my previous life. In my previous life, when I saw him at this time, he was only in his early 50s, but this time, he was already an old man with white hair, looking very wise and immortal-like. Tears welled up in my eyes immediately. I walked up to him and kowtowed 3 times and bowed 9 times. The Taoist priest looked at me, speechless for a long time. Finally, he said, "You look very familiar, young lady. Have we met somewhere before?" I didn't say much but begged him to take me as his disciple. The old Taoist priest said I shouldn't be bound and refused to accept me as a disciple, but since he had no wife, no children, he could take me as his daughter. I immediately knelt down and kowtowed, calling him father. After that, I continued to live in the city and create. On weekends, I would take Declan to the Taoist temple on the mountain, where I would tell my adoptive father about what I had seen and heard and other interesting things. I knew that a kind person like my adoptive father would live a long, long life, and I, having embraced a bright future, would also accompany him with Declan for a long time. Story 2. After being attacked by zombies, I found myself transported back to 10 days before the outbreak of the zombie virus. To survive, I had to lay low and be cautious. I then stole my dad's secret stash of money and started stockpiling supplies. The scene was terrifyingly real. Chaotic streets, people screaming and scattering, countless zombies madly lunging at me. I was pinned to the ground, the blood-stained fangs growing closer to my face. Just before I lost consciousness, I could hear the sound of bones being crushed. I thought I was a goner, but then, a jarring ringtone from a cell phone suddenly woke me, still enveloped by the terror of death. I quickly opened my eyes, jumped out of bed, grabbed a fruit knife from the nightstand, and cautiously surveyed my surroundings. Then, I was shocked. I found myself in a small, cozy 10-square-meter room. My desk was cluttered with homework I hadn't finished the night before, reminding me that I had returned to the world before the virus outbreak. How did I get back home? Ugh, my head hurt so much. Holding my throbbing forehead, I collapsed on the bed. Recalling the events that led up to the zombie bite, my name is Lillian, a typical recent graduate who failed last year's college entrance exam and was sent to a cram school by my dad. But not long after I started the repeat year, the zombie virus broke out. Within 2 days, the city had completely fallen, and zombies were everywhere. I had been wandering outside for a year, and the apocalyptic crisis never seemed to improve. Eventually, unable to resist the longing for home, I risked crossing through zombie-infested territories and was subsequently overwhelmed by a horde of ferocious zombies. As these bloody memories flashed through my mind, I started to doubt if it was all a nightmare when I heard a familiar voice urging me from outside the door. "Lillian, why aren't you up yet? Breakfast is ready." It was my mom's voice. I was thrilled, pushed open the door, and saw my mom and sister busy preparing breakfast for the family around the stove. It was a warm and happy scene. My dad was lounging on the sofa reading the newspaper. Seeing me, he stood up and said, "Lillian, it's okay that you didn't pass the college entrance exam. The most important thing is not to give up hope. I've enrolled you in several more cram schools. Push a little harder and try again next year." Everything was just like in the dream. I remembered, after having this breakfast, I went to the cram school. In 10 days, the zombie virus would break out completely, and I would lose contact with my family, uncertain of their safety until the moment I was bitten and killed by zombies. It wasn't a dream. Shaking my head, I forced myself to calm down and said to my dad, "The tuition for the cram school is too expensive. Let me study at home instead. Don't worry about the tuition fees." Just like in my memory, my dad casually opened a drawer, handed me a bank card, and said, "Your job is to study hard and get into a good university next year. Don't let your mom and me down." "Got it, Dad." Taking the tuition money, I nodded vigorously, my mind already made up. This time, I was determined to protect them. After hurriedly eating a few bites of the meal my mom made, I rushed downstairs. Reuniting with my family felt great, but I no longer had time to enjoy the warmth of home. With only 10 days left until the apocalypse, I had to use the survival skills I learned while on the run. helping my family through this crisis. Firstly, I need to choose a suitable location to build a safe house that can accommodate a family of 4. The apartment buildings in the neighborhood are too high and too crowded, housing thousands of people, each of whom could become an unpredictable factor. In the early stages of the zombie virus outbreak, there will likely be a mass infection among the people. It's uncertain whether the neighbors upstairs and downstairs will turn into biting monsters. Additionally, zombies have a keen sense of smell. The more densely populated the area, the more susceptible it is to attacks. Therefore, I set my sights on the suburbs, which are neither too remote nor too crowded, making it the ideal place for our family to hide. Half an hour later, I arrived near a factory just outside a suburban residential area. There used to be several medium-sized businesses here, but they have been completely abandoned due to economic transition. The rust streaked gates of the abandoned factory were plastered with several rental ads offering cheap rates. Using the phone number on the ads, I contacted the landlord. When he heard that I wanted to rent the entire warehouse, he was surprised. "Ma'am, what do you need such a large warehouse for?" I pulled out the money I had just withdrawn from the bank. "I plan to open an online store, and I need your warehouse for stocking goods. This is the rent for the first quarter. Please count it." The basement storage had been abandoned for a long time, and it was rare for someone to want to rent it. After taking the money, the landlord didn't ask any further questions about what I intended to do, and hurriedly left after dropping off the keys, as if afraid I might change my mind. However, I smiled satisfactorily. With just this small amount of rent, I secured such a large, safe house, although the lease was only for 3 months. I wasn't worried about the landlord coming after me for rent once it expired. After 3 months, zombies would be rampant in the city, and the landlord would definitely have other concerns than chasing me for the rent. After getting the keys, I chose a basement storage room, cleaned it up, and fortified it. With the tuition fees sponsored by my dad, I contacted a renovation company. The workers brought thick steel bars to weld all the air vents shut, ensuring normal air circulation while preventing zombies from crawling in. While replacing the windows with tempered glass, I also installed a periscope for observing the outside. 2 days later, the remodeling was almost complete. The workers, puzzled, asked, "Ma'am, you even installed a periscope. Are you planning to play real-life CS?" I casually replied, "The neighborhood security isn't great. I'm considering safety too." In addition to the periscope, I also bought a 60% new drone through a second-hand platform online. It wasn't cheap, and in just 2 days, the tuition fees for my dad were all spent. Fortunately, the safe house modifications were largely complete. The next thing to consider was quickly figuring out a way to raise money and stock up on enough supplies. At 8 in the evening, I dragged my tired feet home. Dinner had already ended, and while my mom reheated some dishes for me, she tenderly rubbed my head. "You finished classes at the tutoring center so late. Please don't overwork yourself." I hadn't heard my mom nag in a long time, and it warmed my heart. Holding back tears, I said, "Don't worry, Mom. The hard work now is for our family's future." My dad, who was wiping the table, paused for a moment and gave me a look of relief. "It seems our son has truly grown up," I thought, feeling a pang of emotion in my nose. In the past, I was so irresponsible, often skipping school to play online games, causing endless worry for my parents, but not anymore. One night, while my dad was in the shower, I secretly opened his wallet, certain that the bank pin was my mom's birthday. Over the years, he had managed to save quite a bit of money without my mom knowing. I had known about this for a long time. The next day, I woke up early, pretending to go back to my training class for a makeup session, but instead, I hid myself away. It wasn't until after 8 a.m., when both my parents had left for work, that I sneaked back to find the car keys. We owned a small pickup truck that my dad used for deliveries, usually parked in the garage and seldom used. I planned to borrow it to transport supplies. With the apocalypse looming, resources would become extremely scarce, and I had to stock up on all necessary provisions before its arrival. The first issue to address was food, given the prolonged duration of the virus. I opted for foods suitable for long-term storage, such as military compressed biscuits and chocolate. These foods were calorie-dense and had the advantages of being compact, lightweight, and durable, making them easy to carry without spoiling easily. The downside was their monotony, which would make them hard to stomach over time. To diversify the flavors, I also bought plenty of biscuits and canned goods, including both fruit and beef varieties, which were also suitable for long storage and straightforward consumption without the need for heating. Besides these, fresh fruits and vegetables were essential. In the afternoon, I made a trip to a seed company to purchase seeds for various fruits and vegetables. Once back at the safe house, I began cultivating a vegetable garden. Next, I had to tackle the issue of drinking water. In the post-apocalyptic world, the accumulation of numerous corpses would severely contaminate the groundwater, making the price of a bottle of mineral water comparable to gold. I had seen a woman die a horrific death from consuming contaminated groundwater, her body severely decayed. To address the water supply, I constructed a simple filtration system in the safe house and dug a large reservoir to collect rainwater. I planted many shade-loving plants in the water reservoir to help purify it. Additionally, I bought several truckloads of bottled water. Anticipating dry seasons when rain might not fall for extended periods, having secured food and water, the next step was to gather medicines. The post-apocalyptic environment was harsh, filled not only with zombies that could bite but also various viruses and bacteria. Even a common cold or flu could threaten the safety of my family, considering the strict government control over medications. I had no choice but to drive the old pickup around, scavenging for drugs. I bought dozens of boxes of cold medicine, including some for treating bruises and sprains, and prepared a full basket of these, along with bandages, various disinfectants, and antibiotics to last several years. This process was lengthy, and to avoid exposing the location of the safe house, I personally carried all supplies back while stocking up. I systematically inspected the safe house to identify any shortcomings and made immediate repairs as needed. Although the underground storage room was structurally solid, it was not without its flaws. Without a sewage system, living there would inevitably generate various kinds of household waste. In a post-apocalyptic world, even taking out the trash is perilous, as you risk zombie attacks or threats from homeless wanderers. Therefore, after securing food, water, and medical supplies, I knew I needed to arm myself for personal protection. I opted for a firefighter's axe and a retractable baton, compact, lightweight, and reasonably powerful. Additionally, I gathered some everyday essentials, such as flashlights, toilet paper, and garbage bags. Most supplies were easy to come by and available at the local market, but purchasing feminine hygiene products alone was embarrassingly awkward. Can you picture a 19-year-old guy hustling alongside middle-aged women at a discount sale for sanitary pads? It was mortifying. When I went to check out with a cart full of goods, the cashier's odd stares made me wish I could dig a hole and hide, but for the sake of making life easier for my family, I'd endure being seen as a weirdo. During those days, I was constantly busy with preparations for the impending doom. It wasn't long before I faced a significant crisis. Somehow, my dad found out I had dipped into his emergency fund. When I got home one day, he was waiting at the door, confronting me about it. My dad believes in tough love, and had he discovered my secret use of the funds, I wouldn't have needed to wait for a zombie outbreak for him to finish me off. I couldn't admit to it, so to divert his attention, I exposed his secret stash of money instead. What? You dare keep secret cash? My mom, who was doing laundry, exploded with anger and dragged Dad by the ear into the bedroom, sparing me a beating. That night, I eavesdropped as my dad knelt on the washboard, trying to defend himself. I thought to myself, hang in there, Dad, Mom will forgive you once the apocalypse arrives. The emergency fund issue soon blew over, but my family's suspicion towards me only grew. I was too preoccupied to focus on my studies and was exhausted from all the early mornings and late nights. The next day, my sister Stella cornered me. What have you been up to lately? I saw you scrambling with those women for discounted sanitary pads at the supermarket. It was so embarrassing. Embarrassed and after much thought, I decided to tell her the truth. I had been inventing excuses for my parents' constant inquiries, and it was giving me a headache. I realized I couldn't keep my action secret forever, so I confessed to her. Stella, only a year younger and about to enter her final year of high school, has always been lively and open to new ideas. Moved by my situation, she hugged my arm and chided. Why didn't you tell Mom and Dad about this sooner? I replied with a wry smile. You know what our parents are like, they'd never believe this. Keep it a secret for now. I'll tell them when the time is right. Stella agreed and even offered her own savings to support my plans. With her help, we purchased more essentials and stocked up on Stella's favorite snacks like ham sausages, dried cheese, pine nuts, and sunflower seeds. Considering the unpredictable post-apocalypse climate, I prepared several sets of winter cotton clothes for everyone and amassed a plethora of summer attire, including anti-slip sneakers with steel studs, masks for viral protection, various bedding items, and disposable underwear and socks. We also packed several boxes of supplies. Stella, being meticulous, had taken the time to learn various vegetable gardening techniques online and spent considerable time selecting the seeds we needed to plant. She reminded me that the lighting conditions in the safe house were poor and not all fruits and vegetables could adapt to this environment. We should focus on cultivating vegetables like cabbage and potatoes. She also pointed out that subsisting on compressed biscuits and canned food would lead to nutritional deficiencies over time. It would be better to raise some poultry in the safe house for a regular supply of fresh protein to keep illnesses at bay. This posed a problem for me. as the safe house wasn't designed for keeping poultry, and raising animals would require a significant amount of feed. Moreover, without timely cleaning of animal waste, the place would soon become uninhabitable. However, Stella smiled and said, "I've already thought of a solution. Remember the water reservoir you built? We can utilize it to raise fish, which would also help purify the water. As for the feed, there was no need to worry. Fish feed was readily available and affordable in the market. As long as the filtration system in the fish pond was powerful enough, it wouldn't affect the use of water." I smacked my forehead and exclaimed, "You're brilliant, let's do it." With the money ready, everything moved quickly. Just one day before the virus outbreak, I had stockpiled enough supplies to last our family for 3 years and installed traps around the main entrance to fend off zombies. The years of exile had not been in vain. Relying on these survival skills, I had fortified the safe house securely. Despite this, Stella couldn't help but worry. "Sis, our supplies will only last for 3 years. What will we do after that?" I patted her little head and reassured her. Based on past experiences, the government would immediately invest in vaccine research and production after the outbreak, given our country's capabilities. 3 years should be sufficient to develop an effective cure. If we could last these 3 years, I was confident that order would be restored to the human world. After moving everything, it was almost dark. Stella looked at her phone and said, "Let's go home, it's getting late, and Mom and Dad will be worried." I shook my head. "Let's not go back tonight, let's get used to life here first. If anything is lacking, we can still make improvements early on." Stella hesitated. "Aren't you worried about Mom and Dad?" I grinned mischievously. "It's good if they worry, otherwise, how can I trick them into coming here?" Our parents were quite conservative and wouldn't accept such an absurd reality. If I told them the truth outright, they would not only disbelieve me but might also subject me to a merciless intervention, potentially leaving me crippled. The only solution was to make Stella and myself disappear. Once panicked, they would follow the clues I had left at home and find their way to the safe house. I ruefully told Stella, "Once Mom and Dad find us, I'll figure out a way to hold them here. You'll lock the main door from inside. Once the zombie virus breaks out outside." They were too preoccupied to beat me up, I thought. Events unfolded just as I had anticipated. On the day the virus broke out, the sky was exceptionally gloomy. Birds flew in flocks over the safe house, and even stray cats and dogs barked restlessly. I was crouched down, inspecting the filtration system in the safe house, when suddenly I heard the main door being kicked open. Turning around, I saw my parents, their faces livid with anger, storming in. I quickly signaled to Stella to close the back door while I hurriedly got up to meet them. Before I could utter the explanation I had rehearsed, my dad roared, "You little rascal, rebelling, are you?" and kicked me. I stumbled, and with a mix of tears and laughter, tried to explain the situation to my dad, who was too enraged to listen and slapped me several times, leaving me dizzy. Seeing the situation turning bad, Stella quickly shut the door and then tried to stop my dad, saying, "Dad, my sister and I didn't mean to hide this from you. Listen, the zombie virus is about to break out. She did this to save our family." "What?" Both my parents froze, gripping Stella's hand, demanding to know what was going on. I took the opportunity to get up, rubbing my swollen cheek. Reflecting on how heavy the word fatherly love truly weighed, my dad, still skeptical, pulled Stella aside and hesitantly approached me. "Son, is all of this true?" Tired of explaining, I pulled out my phone and opened a live news broadcast. On the screen, the news anchor, reading from a cliched script, was emphasizing the supposed stability within the country compared to the chaos abroad. Suddenly, a staff member rushed into the studio, handing the anchor a note. The anchor's face changed immediately. "We interrupt this program with urgent news. A highly infectious virus has been reported in our city, with numerous citizens already infected. The government urges everyone to stay at home and avoid getting infected." As we were all intently watching the news, numerous cries of alarm could be heard outside the safe house. I quickly looked through the periscope and saw blood-covered individuals running from the suburban areas, followed by others with hunched postures. These were no longer people. Despite wearing regular clothes, their torsos were covered with grotesque wounds oozing dark fluid, and their skin displayed an unnatural bluish-black hue. The most terrifying aspect was their teeth, sharp like those of a shark, certainly not human. Their movements were twisted and eerie, yet their speed was alarming, quickly catching up to their targets. Soon, the person in front was tackled down, and the street echoed with his agonizing screams. I stepped aside to let my dad look through the periscope. There was no need for visuals. The terrifying screams from outside the vent were enough evidence. After a while, quiet returned outside. Both my parents, pale-faced, slumped on the sofa, murmuring, "It's true, such outrageous things really happened." I comforted my dad, "Don't worry, trust that the country can handle these zombies. However, it might take a long time." Probably at least 2 to 3 years. For now, our family of 4 must live inside this safe house. I remembered that right after the outbreak of the zombie virus, the government would immediately initiate emergency plans. Focused research and treatment of the virus were initiated, but the spread was alarmingly rapid. Within just a few days, it had swept across the entire country, resulting in massive casualties and significantly complicating relief efforts. By the time I was bitten, no effective cure had been developed. All we could do was wait. My mother was speechless for a long time until her emotions stabilized. Then she began to scold me, questioning why I hadn't informed them about the situation sooner. Rubbing my stinging cheek, I responded with a bitter smile. If I had told you earlier, would I have been any better off? Didn't Dad just beat me up? It still hurts. My mother rolled her eyes at me. Doesn't it hurt when your dad hits you? Look at you. You almost made your dad sprain his finger. Listening to the screams outside, my parents were extremely worried, but I remained calm. The zombies were indeed numerous, but the suburban population was not as dense as in the city center, with several urban-rural areas nearby. The zombies were attracted to the more populated regions and were less likely to target us. Our safe house was sturdily built, and it was unlikely that zombies could breach it. After several busy days, I was exhausted. Instructed my dad to secure the front door, and went back to bed. When I woke up the next morning, my parents were still anxiously guarding the door, refusing to leave. Thankfully, my sister Stella had taken the initiative to prepare meals for us, understanding the stress our parents were under. Since the outbreak of the zombie virus was recent, the city's water and electricity were still functioning, apart from being confined to our safe house. Life for our family of 4 hadn't changed drastically. However, the previous day's events had caused my parents to lose their appetite. After barely managing a few sips of porridge, my dad began to pace anxiously, muttering about the chaos outside and worrying about his colleagues. All I could do was reassure him and suggest focusing on our future as a family, although my actions might seem selfish in my father's eyes. I'm neither a saint nor do I have the capacity to save everyone. Being able to build this safe house and take care of my family was already the limit of my abilities. Stella was very timid. She had spent the past few days near the periscope, crying at the dire situation outside and seeking comfort in the arms of my dad and me, trembling and questioning, what if those monsters break through? Is the door strong enough? What if the zombies get inside? I patted her forehead and reassured her. Don't worry, Dad and I will definitely protect you and Mom. As the only 2 males in the family, it was our duty to take care of them. In my spare time, I began to work out and took out the prepared firefighting axe and telescopic baton, placing them within easy reach. My dad had adapted to our new reality and began patrolling and checking the safe house's defenses, identifying areas for improvement, working at a mechanical plant. He had strong practical skills and spent a few days fixing any oversights I had missed. My mom and Stella took on the responsibility of growing fruits and feeding fish, and they learned some basic nursing skills. In such a harsh survival environment, no one could guarantee they wouldn't get injured or fall ill. Having these nursing skills could better help us take care of our family. Fortunately, the city's infrastructure was still relatively good, despite the virus outbreak lasting for 5 or 6 days. Our safe house still had running water and electricity. The mobile signal was unaffected. Stella would occasionally check her phone and use chat apps to contact her classmates to discuss life after the apocalypse. Honestly, everyone was living miserably. The sudden catastrophe plunged the city into unprecedented chaos. All factories had shut down, and zombies could be seen everywhere on the streets, completely paralyzing traffic. Initially, some people placed their hopes on the government, but I knew the disaster was too widespread. Even national-level rescue efforts couldn't keep up with the pace at which the disaster was spreading. Outside, the transportation had completely collapsed, making it impossible for rescue supplies to reach those in need. Many people, while searching for supplies, were surrounded and attacked by zombies. Those who survived often fought each other over food. It was indescribably tragic. By comparison, our family was practically living in paradise, without any disruption to electricity or water. Mom even showcased her cooking skills by preparing a pot of braised fish, the aroma of which had both Dad and me drooling. However, after eating our fill, I reminded Mom not to use open flames for cooking anymore. Her cooking skills were indeed exceptional, but the smell of food could easily drift out through the vent and attract other survivors. In these apocalyptic times, the human heart is the most complex. Once our hiding place was exposed, our safe house would no longer be safe. Dad agreed and also cautioned Mom. Also, when you and Stella use your phones to find out about the outside world, make sure not to reveal any information about us. It's best to set your status to invisible to avoid attracting attention. In an environment where supplies were extremely scarce and zombies were everywhere, our family was dripping with riches, able to indulge in luxuries like braised fish, which made us a target of envy. I was most worried about Stella. Her lack of experience made her vulnerable to being tricked during online chats with classmates, so I urged Mom to keep a close eye on her and ensure that she didn't reveal anything she shouldn't. Our family was extremely cautious, watching as the world outside fell deeper into chaos, and all we could do was worry helplessly. In the third week of the virus outbreak, the city lost power, all electrical devices stopped working, and we could no longer use our phones to learn about the outside situation. But I knew that the outside world was only getting more chaotic. The entire city was without electricity, and the survivors' days were only getting tougher. And this was just the beginning. 2 weeks after the power cut, the water supply also failed. If it had just been a power outage, people could have stayed indoors and endured it, but the lack of water meant that survivors living in high-rise buildings could no longer stay in their homes and had to risk moving to places closer to water sources. This massive migration brought disastrous consequences. The zombies, always ready for a feast, would not let them go easily. This hypothesis was soon confirmed. On the 25th day of the outbreak, dense screams suddenly came from a residential area in the suburbs. Although there had been screams outside during this period, such large-scale screaming was unheard of before. The continuous screams caught the attention of the entire family. Dad hurriedly looked through the periscope, only to recoil after one glance, his face pale as he said, "Outside, there are so many people. They are being attacked by zombies. There are bodies everywhere. It's terrible." I didn't say anything, because I had already anticipated this situation. Less than 2 kilometers from the safe house, there is a suburban area where at least 10,000 people reside. After experiencing water and power outages, these people are bound to flee their homes in search of food and water sources. Zombies, following the scent of these people, launch attacks midway. The number of those who manage to find water and survive is extremely small. The situation is tragic. Through the periscope, I can see people being chased by zombies everywhere. Some are trapped in their cars with their families, while others are dragged to the side of the road and viciously bitten by zombies. I even saw a pregnant woman being devoured alive by zombies. Those who are attacked soon stagger to their feet, either numbly wandering in circles or lunging at the nearest person. The gory scene is chilling and evokes a sense of shared misery. With so many people moving together, it's inevitable that they will all be wiped out by zombies. If our family leaves the safe house, we're essentially walking into danger. Stella is already terrified, curling up in the corner. With every scream from outside, she shudders violently, holding my arm in despair. "Sis, maybe we should try to save them. It's just too awful." "Foolish girl, we need to take care of ourselves first. In this situation, we might not even be able to save ourselves," I replied. "I'm not heartless. Hearing the screams of others inevitably pains my heart. However, I can't play the saint and put ourselves in danger for the sake of others. We've witnessed too much death recently, and it has numbed us. Every couple of days, people venture out in search of food and water, and their fates are usually grim, with fewer than 20% making it back alive. Of course, people won't just sit and wait for death. Many choose to flee with their families, but their fates are equally tragic. One day, while I was watering the potatoes, I suddenly heard my sister's cry of alarm and rushed to check on her. I saw a group of 7 people, both men and women, all young, wearing sunglasses and masks, wrapped up tightly, running towards the parking lot of the residential area. They cautiously avoided areas heavily infested with zombies. I'm familiar with such scenes. The residential area is too dangerous, and every day people try to drive out of the city. But I know that even if they manage to escape to another city, their fate will be the same. The surrounding cities have already fallen, and this action is hardly better than waiting to die at home. These people were somewhat clever. 4 of them went to open the car doors, while the other 3 kept watch. They even placed an alarm clock at a distance to try to distract the zombies with the noise. However, they underestimated the scale of the zombies. Soon after the alarm went off, hordes of zombies appeared. The 3 keeping watch were quickly surrounded. I heard the fierce sounds of struggle and the excited howls of the zombies. The people in the car panicked, quickly abandoning the vehicle and clumsily rushing into a building, with a large group of zombies following them. I couldn't see exactly what happened, but continuous screams soon began. The zombies broke into the building and began hunting down the escapees. Within minutes, a portly man screamed as he jumped out of the window to escape, but was quickly tackled and bitten by zombies outside, turning into a bloody mess. The scene was heart-wrenching. I averted my gaze and sighed to my dad. "It looks like we're going to have a few more infected near the settlement." Life inside the safe house was oppressive. Not only did we have to guard against the threat of zombies, But we also had to endure the constant barrage of gruesome death scenes. Honestly, it was tough on the spirit. The only solace was the plants we had previously planted in the cultivation room, which had begun to take root and sprout. These tender plants seemed to represent the miracle of new life, bringing us a bit of comfort for the soul. At lunch, Mom made an extra dish to celebrate these sprouting lives. After eating, Dad and I went to the vegetable garden to carefully water them. But before we finished watering, I heard the roaring sound of car engines outside, followed by a broadcast. Citizens, we are rescue team members. The nation has not abandoned everyone. Please, upon hearing this broadcast, quickly bring food and water and gather at the square. We will lead everyone out of the city to a place free from the virus and zombies to start a new life. The broadcast repeated several times, mainly focusing on the outskirts where the city meets the countryside. Mom and Stella were thrilled, immediately dropping their watering tools. Great, the rescue team has finally come, we can be saved. As they started packing to leave, Dad and I exchanged glances and quickly stopped them. Don't go, it could be a trap. It had only been 2 months since the virus outbreak, and several nearby cities had already fallen. The whole country was shrouded in the shadow of the apocalypse. It was too soon for a rescue team to arrive. In my previous life, I had waited nearly half a year without seeing any large-scale rescue. Logic told me that this rescue team outside was a hoax. Mom, startled, questioned how it could be possible. If these people weren't from a rescue team, why would they broadcast to lure us out? Most likely to steal supplies, I guessed. I immediately grabbed the periscope, adjusted the angle, and looked in the direction of the broadcast. Sure enough, what arrived were not rescue vehicles but a hodgepodge of private cars. These people parked on the roadside and used the broadcast to lure unsuspecting survivors, demanding those with food and water leave their supplies behind. Those who came for help without anything were violently driven away. Some people who couldn't stand it and confronted these rescue teams were immediately beaten up. They were nothing but a gang of bandits. Thank goodness we didn't go out just now, or the consequences would have been unimaginable, I said. Mom also saw everything through the periscope, her face turning pale as she collapsed onto the couch. Stella cried helplessly, "These people are so cruel. How can they do this? Everyone is already living so miserably, and they even want to take away the little food we have left. It's utterly inhumane." I gave a wry smile. Perhaps this is human nature. The apocalypse truly tests humanity in such extreme conditions. The bloody reality gradually surfaces. Many refugees, under these circumstances, spontaneously band together, forming bands that roam around looting and killing. At night, when the zombies are most active, members of the gang find a place to hide and wait for dawn. During the day, when the sunlight is strongest and the zombies are least active, they sneak into residential areas to carry out their looting plans. Fortunately, not everyone is foolish. Having witnessed the gang's actions, the surviving residents refuse to show themselves. The vehicles parked outside for a long time don't manage to gather much in the way of supplies. The gang leader then changes tactics, shockingly decides to go door to door, armed with weapons, forcing the vulnerable, like widows and orphans, to hand over their food. My father, enraged by what he sees, says, "Lillian, we can't just watch this happen. These people keep roaming around nearby, and they're a threat to us. It would be disastrous if they found this safe house." I hesitate and ask my father what he plans to do. He can't think of anything immediately. Frustrated, he keeps pinching his thigh. My mother quickly tries to calm him down, arguing that it's better to let it go since they outnumber us, look menacing, and are heavily armed. We simply can't provoke them. While my parents are caught up arguing, I, peering through the periscope, spot several zombies wandering aimlessly like headless flies. An idea suddenly strikes me. I approach my father and suggest that we could use the zombies to drive away these troublemakers. My father, puzzled, asks how I plan to do that. Looking at the fish swimming in the water tank, a bold plan forms in my mind. Zombies have an acute sense of smell and hearing, especially sensitive to anything with a fishy scent. The robbers don't dare to be too reckless. They cover themselves up tightly to prevent any scent from leaking and attracting a zombie assault. We could use scent to lure the zombies to them. Around 5 in the afternoon, when the sun is setting and the zombies begin to stir from cool places, my father and I decide to act. If the plan is executed correctly, it would be a one-way trip for the gang. We finally put to use an expensive drone we had bought earlier. After a simple dinner, I carefully release the drone through the ventilating window. My mother and Stella catch a large live carp, and my father is tasked with killing it. Deliberately smearing the blood and guts all over the drone, he even hangs the smelliest parts of the guts on the drone using a rope. After checking everything one last time, I position myself under the periscope, observing the outside while controlling the drone, loaded with fresh fish guts, to hover over the street outside. The drone's remote control range is 3 kilometers, just enough to attract the zombies to their target. As expected, the mindless zombies quickly fall for it. The fish itself carries a natural fishy smell, and with the drone smeared in fish blood, it proves fatally enticing to the zombies. All the zombies gather around the drone, making excited, growling noises. However, as the drone flies high, the zombies can't reach it. Despite their jumping, they clumsily follow it, and soon reach near the square where the gang members are still scavenging for food, caught off guard by the swift arrival of the zombies. The gang members realize too late what's happening. The drone hovers directly above them, the smell of blood emanating from it enough to drive the zombies into a frenzy, who rush to encircle the square. Initially, the zombies are only interested in my drone, but soon they find a more intriguing target. The gang members, like a group of sharks that smell blood, swiftly shift their focus and pounce on them. Several robbers armed with axes were quickly surrounded by zombies. The crowd panicked and began to scatter, but the number of zombies closing in was considerable. Soon, the last 3 people at the back were tackled to the ground. Those who were tackled began to scream for help, hoping their companions would rescue them. However, such mobs are typically disorganized and self-centered in critical moments, so no one was willing to help those tackled by the zombies. The robbers quickly dispersed. A few lucky ones managed to dive into an SUV, ramming through the zombies to escape, but many others didn't manage to start their cars in time and had to climb onto the roofs to temporarily evade the zombies. Unfortunately, the zombies didn't let them off easily. Soon, the area beneath the vehicles was swarming with zombies. Some people were grabbed by their legs and dragged under, while more zombies climbed up the doors. The horrifying screams soon filled the street. I crouched in the safe house, my face grim. Although the robbers were driven away, the number and hunting capability of the zombies sent chills down our spines. The number of zombies in the area was increasing, quickly turning it into a zombie land. My dad sighed repeatedly, patted my shoulder, and suggested I retrieve the drone first. I carefully controlled the drone back. After retrieving it, I made an unexpected discovery. Following behind my drone was another unfamiliar drone, with a blood-stained cloth hanging from its wing, scribbled with hasty handwriting. "You must be the survivors living under the storage room. I'm the owner of Unit 603 in Nanhua Community. Do you have any medical supplies? My wife has a fever. Please help us." Seeing the message on the cloth made me nervous since it exposed the location of our safe house, which could be highly disadvantageous for my family. My dad analyzed. Nanhua Community is near the plaza, less than 2 kilometers from our safe house. Probably the owner of that apartment saw you operating the drone and hastily wrote this plea for help, sending it with our drone. My mom and Stella, kind-hearted as they are, urged me to help this family. I hesitated, but revealing wealth brings troubles. If we help the requester, how can we ensure they won't turn on us? My mom replied, "Don't think so poorly of everyone. That family wouldn't have written this plea if they weren't desperate." At my mom's insistence, I decided to act kindly. Our safe house had a good stock of medical supplies, including fever reducers and antibiotics. I tied these medicines to the undercarriage of the unfamiliar drone and monitored its flight direction through the periscope. Sure enough, in a residential building on the plaza, a window was quickly opened, and a man wearing glasses cautiously reached out to retrieve the medicines. Then, he attached a gift box under the drone and sent it back to us. When I opened the gift box, I found 2 pieces of smoked sausage inside. My mom clapped her hands excitedly. "I told you, good deeds bring good rewards, and finally, we can enjoy a change of taste." I felt grateful that the family knew how to reciprocate kindness. For the next while, I occasionally communicated with the family in Unit 603 via the drone. I learned that the glasses-wearing man was a high school teacher, living with his wife. Since the outbreak, they had been trapped at home. Fortunately, their apartment was on the top floor with a staircase leading directly to the rooftop, where the man had planted various vegetables and fruits, along with a stock of smoked sausages. They were managing to survive. Although his wife was not in good health, our house was always short on medicines. We began to share what we had. If the man next door lacked medicine, I would send some over using a drone. In return, he gave us some smoked bacon and even used his knowledge in physics to help me improve our water recycling filtration system. After spending over half a year in the safe house, our family of 4 had fully adapted to this lifestyle. The potatoes and eggplants we had planted were now yielding a bountiful harvest. Those days, my parents were overjoyed, busy harvesting the fresh vegetables to be dried and preserved by Stella. I finally tasted fresh melons, and the long-missed aroma of vegetables exploded on my taste buds. It was incredibly delightful. One evening, my mother approached me and said, "The family at 603 is having a tough time. Why don't you use your drone to send them some fresh vegetables?" I agreed and piloted the drone to deliver freshly picked eggplants. It was a long while before the man at 603 opened his window, on which he had hung a note. The note bore unfortunate news. His wife had succumbed to her illness and passed away early yesterday morning. Instantly, the joy our family felt was overshadowed by this sad news. My father stared blankly at the vent window, cursing, "This damn virus, how long will it continue?" By the 7th month of the apocalypse, it began to snow outside, our safe house lacked heating, and the rain and snow seeped in through the vent, chilling us to the bone. The damp and cold winter of the South felt penetratingly magical, bringing about a sense of despair. Despite my mother pulling out all our thick quilts, they were not enough to fend off the cold. Relying on our stockpiled supplies, we managed to scrape by, but the man at 603 was in a dire situation. During the second week of the blizzard, he sent a message asking for help, saying he had caught a severe cold and might not survive the winter. He wrote the note as a farewell and to thank our family for our long-term care. Upon receiving his note, my parents were visibly distressed. Although we had never met face-to-face, the exchange of messages over time had made us consider him a friend. My mother suggested, "Lillian, don't we still have plenty of antibiotics? Send some to Finley, owner of 603, and maybe catch a fish for him to make soup. It's so cold, and he's hungry and severely ill. How can he cope?" I knew my mother had a tendency to be overly compassionate, but I agreed nonetheless. I couldn't stop her kindness, however. Her good intentions eventually led to a security risk for us. After sending the medicines and food to Finley, the drone malfunctioned on its way back, crashing into an electric line and falling. My father and I were frantic. The drone was our crucial means of understanding the outside world, and we couldn't afford to lose it. Eventually, my father and I decided to take the risk and leave the safe house to retrieve the damaged drone to see if it could be repaired, despite the high risks involved. We had no other choice. The winter wind was harsh as if slapping us brutally, and the road was covered with a thick layer of ice. My father and I cracked the door open just enough to ensure there were no zombies nearby before cautiously stepping out. I instructed my father to keep watch close to the safe house while I went to look for the drone, but he was reluctant to let me go alone. Reluctantly, Dad insisted on coming with me. Fortunately, the drone hadn't fallen far, and I quickly found it buried in the snow. I picked it up in a hurry and was about to check what went wrong when Dad suddenly pushed me and shouted, "Lillian, run." I turned back to see a horde of zombies emerging from the snow, rapidly heading towards us. The winter was cold, and our thick coats made it hard to move, but the zombies were unaffected, unable to run back to the main gate in time. The first zombie charged at us. I swung my baton forcefully, pushing back the zombies in front, while Dad came over to help. "You open the door, I'll hold them off," he said. "Got it," I replied, rushing to push the door open, but then I heard Dad scream. Turning around, I saw a zombie leap onto his back and bite down. Thankfully, the thick layers he'd wrapped himself in before leaving the house protected him. The bite only tore through the outer jacket without drawing blood. However, more zombies were closing in, about to surround us. "Dad," I yelled, about to rush to his aid when the door of the safe house swung open. Surprisingly, my usually timid mom charged out wielding a rolling pin, striking the zombie that had attacked Dad. "How dare you attack my husband? How dare you attack my son?" Her ferocity was like that of a bodyguard, quickly clearing the zombies around Dad. "Mom, why did you come out?" I was shocked by her bold actions. With the tide of undead not yet upon us, I quickly pulled them into the safe house. Stella, who had been hiding behind the door, promptly shut the iron door behind us. With a loud bang, the zombies were kept outside, through the iron door. I could even hear their nails scraping against the metal, sending chills down my spine. Mom, who had been so fierce just moments before, now knelt on the floor of the safe house, sobbing in terror. Dad and I rushed to comfort her, each of us hugging her tightly as she cried. What would we do if something happened to you too? Seeing Mom cry her heart out brought tears to my eyes. Perhaps this is what family is all about. Once emotions stabilized, I insisted Dad take off his coat to check for any bite wounds. Fortunately, it was a close call with no injuries. His only wound was a scrape from a fall. Just to be safe, I gave him an antibiotic shot and urged him to rest and conserve energy in case he fell ill. After enduring that long winter, spring finally arrived, signaling a time of renewal. Thankfully, our family survived. With a year's experience in planting, my parents expanded their gardening efforts. Our safe house was now filled with greenery and various fruits and vegetables. The man from Unit 603 had also survived the winter and continued to exchange information with us via the drone. I kept using the drone to monitor the situation outside. A year had passed since the virus outbreak, and only a few households remained within several kilometers. Those who had survived this long had ample experience in survival. After discussing with my family, I decided to use the drone to establish contact with these few remaining households. Subsequently, We formed an alliance and even collaborated to set traps to eliminate the zombies that frequently roamed near our residential area. Zombies aren't bothered by the cold, but they dread the harsh sunlight, which accelerates the decay of their bodies and slows their movements considerably. During the hottest days of summer, the households in our area would band together to scavenge for essential supplies. Although our family wasn't short on food, my father joined in these scavenging trips a few times to integrate with the larger community. Taking advantage of the scorching summer days, we emptied several nearby supermarkets. That day, my father even brought home a bag of rice and several packets of hot pot base, which delighted Stella immensely. In the evening, our family sat joyfully around the stove, savoring a long-missed hot pot meal. However, the risk of cooking with an open flame was still too high. After witnessing a tragic event, my mother decided never to use an open flame again. That night, while I was maintaining the safety shelter's filtration system, I suddenly heard screaming outside. I quickly observed the situation through the periscope and saw a disheveled woman running frantically to the door of a survivor's house, pounding on it violently. Soon after, a large group of zombies followed and viciously attacked the building. Eventually, the disheveled woman and the family inside were all killed by the zombies. At first, I didn't understand what had happened until I spoke with a man from Unit 603, who explained the situation. The incident occurred while the family was eating hot pot. The smell of the hot oil drifted outside, attracting a refugee who was fleeing from place to place. It was this refugee who led the zombies to them, and in a moment of indulgence, the whole family perished, a truly regrettable outcome. After that day, my mother organized a family meeting. We collected all items that could start a fire and established a rule that we would only light a fire once a week, specifically for making fish soup on Sundays. We had no objections. What did a slight drop in living standards matter compared to our lives? Our family lived cautiously, albeit humbly, yet in peace. Each day, Stella would make a mark on the wall with chalk, murmuring sadly to herself, "It's been so long. I wonder when it will be safe outside." At those moments, I would hug Stella's shoulders and cheer her up with a smile. "Don't worry, the country won't abandon us. As long as we stay united as a family and live a simple life together, we will eventually see better days." As the seasons changed and winter returned, more than 500 days had passed since the virus outbreak. Stella grew up, becoming very well behaved and knowledgeable. Not only did she take over all the household chores, but she also self-studied a great deal of medical knowledge, which eased our worries whenever someone had a minor ailment. My parents focused on cultivating the land beneath our safe house, planting lots of cabbages. When it was time to harvest the cabbages, my mother made an exception and used a bag of flour to prepare a simple meal of beef dumplings. Despite lacking dipping sauces, we enjoyed the meal immensely. Compared to the blood-covered, wandering infected zombies in the cold and snowy outdoors, our home felt like heaven. Although the threat of zombies still lingered, the smiles began to reappear on everyone's faces as they watched over their family. After the arrival of spring, our family recently celebrated a great joyous event. While Mom was cooking for everyone, she suddenly started vomiting out of nowhere. Stella and I were terrified, thinking Mom had fallen ill, until Stella noticed Mom's slightly bulging belly and her expression turned peculiar. Dad chuckled and said, "Staying in the safe house all day gets boring. Since we're not doing much anyway, we thought we might as well have some fun and give you guys a little brother or sister." Stella and I were speechless. Well, I figured it out. The only real newcomer was the one in Mom's belly. I had to admire their nerve. Considering the timing, adding a new member to the family should have been a happy occasion, but it undoubtedly added to our burdens. Later, the man from apartment 603 learned about it and sent over 2 eggs as a celebratory gesture. We were all happy to receive the eggs, but amidst the joy, I felt particularly puzzled. I quickly sent a message via drone, asking him where he got the eggs from. It had been nearly 2 years since the apocalypse began. It was impossible for anyone to keep poultry, and eggs weren't easy to preserve or have lasted from before the apocalypse. He told me that recently, several helicopters had appeared over the city. Living high up, he was among the first to spot them and excitedly ran to the rooftop to call for help. The people in the helicopter then dropped some supplies, including the eggs. This news filled us with overwhelming joy. After waiting for 2 years, the National Rescue Team had finally arrived. Indeed, 3 days after receiving the eggs, many drones appeared in the sky above the city, randomly dropping supplies. I was at home picking tomatoes when I suddenly heard the sound of propellers and hurriedly used a periscope to look outside. The sight was incredibly thrilling. Besides the drones dropping supplies, I saw several military helicopters sweeping across the sky, and I could even hear them exchanging fire with zombies. Soon, a long-missed broadcast echoed through the city skies. "Dear citizens, please stay indoors and do not venture out. Our troops are currently eliminating the zombies. And it is very unsafe outside. Additionally, every day at 6 in the evening, we will concentrate on dropping supplies. After you hear the gunfire stop, please proceed immediately to the drop sites to collect supplies. Please do not rush and try to maintain order at the scene. The broadcast continued to circle over the city, followed by a stirring national anthem that was deafening and moved Stella and me to tears. Given past experiences, Mom was still cautious, holding Stella and me back, saying, "Don't go out yet, it might be those rogue groups causing trouble again." Dad also added, "Yes, we have enough supplies for now, let's stay in the safe house for a while longer and see how things unfold outside." Both Mom and Dad are conservative by nature, which my sister and I understand. However, the gunfire and armed helicopters outside were real, indicating that our nation had not abandoned us. The rescue teams had crossed several cities to reach us. 2 days later, using the periscope again, I spotted some soldiers in camouflage. They conducted a large-scale clearing of zombies near residential areas and left behind some supplies and medicine, shouting through a megaphone, "Citizens, the zombies nearby have been cleared out, and it is now safe within a 2-kilometer radius. You can come out for some fresh air, but please don't wander off too far. There are still more zombies in the city center, and we will launch a full-scale attack on them tomorrow." After the soldiers left, Stella eagerly grabbed her mother's hand, exclaiming excitedly, "Mom, did you hear that? The zombies near our residence have been eliminated. We'll soon be able to leave the safe house, and the city will calm down before we know it." Her mother nodded, wiping away tears of joy. "Yes, the disaster is finally coming to an end. Soon, our family can live without fear." That evening, her father pulled out a pack of hot pot spices, and they lit a fire once more. The family gathered together, celebrating the joy of surviving the ordeal in lively spirits. The day after the soldiers departed, more intense gunfire could be heard from the city center. In the afternoon, a distinguished guest arrived at their home. It was the man from apartment 603. He brought with him a load of fresh groceries and rushed to the door of the safe house, knocking excitedly. "No need to hide anymore. It's safe now. I've brought you something to eat." Since the outbreak, our family of 4 hadn't ventured out much and was unfamiliar with the outside world. We opened the door to let him in and asked for details. The man from 603 had been outside and had gathered quite a bit of insider information, which he shared in great detail. The situation was as I had expected. The sudden disaster had spread globally in a very short time, affecting not only our city but other provinces at the same time. Initially, the country was in a reactive mode, able to conduct only small-scale rescues before gradually expanding the effort and reclaiming the overrun areas bit by bit. The hardships of the journey go without saying. This unprecedented disaster caused tremendous losses to the nation, and the population was greatly reduced. Since our city is quite remote, it took the military 2 years to gradually fight their way here. Although it was tough, they made it, and victory will eventually be ours. It won't be long before the city regains its vitality. More rescue teams will be stationed here soon to help us rebuild our homes. Also, the government has developed a vaccine specifically for the zombie virus. People outside are lining up to get vaccinated. You should find a time to register too. Pregnant women like your sister-in-law can even apply for home vaccination. After seeing off the guests from 603, our family hugged each other once more, crying tears of relief. It was over. Everything was over. 2 days later, my father, sister, and I, supporting my pregnant mother, went to get vaccinated. Life had returned to the streets, with military vehicles occasionally passing by, and the city's loudspeakers broadcasting messages of hope. "Citizens, the darkness will pass, and we are on the brink of a new dawn. The city is safe, and we hope everyone will participate in the reconstruction efforts to rebuild our homes." Then, I was taken aback. But disaster only when about to lose it. Can one truly appreciate the beauty of home? All the hardships endured are worth it for this day. On July 19th, the last zombie in the city was completely eliminated. On September 3rd, the broadcast brought great news that all the peripheral cities in the south had been liberated. By November 6th, every survivor had been successfully vaccinated against the virus, and there was no longer any fear of infection. By that time, I had already donned the uniform of the rescue team, joining the efforts to rebuild after the disaster. The aftermath was a mess everywhere, but I firmly believe that as long as faith endures, humanity can find a new oasis.